Stay in the middle, okay? We had a couple of moments there that he stayed in the middle and then he got in trouble. Second, whenever you can dive into the attacker and use him as a human shield. That's how we call it. Not for too long. 1 or 2 motions, push him away, then get out of the situation safe. Okay, thank you guys for joining our Krav Maga class. You guys can stay tuned and check out our Facebook and YouTube page and learn more Krav Maga tips and lessons. Thank you.
Welcome back to ILTV on the Hour. We are live from Israel, bringing you the biggest headlines of the region. It's currently 7 a.m. in New York City. It's 2 p.m. here in Israel. I'm Caleb Ben David, and here's your roundup of the latest developments. U.S. President Donald Trump is calling on Iranians to keep protesting and to take over state institutions, vowing that help is on the way. This as mass demonstrations against the Tehran regime enter their third week. Now, Trump said he has canceled all meetings with Iranian officials until the deadly crackdown ends, but he did not specify what form the help he promised might take, leaving America's next steps unclear. Iranian authorities report around 2,000 people killed in the uprising, a figure they offered publicly in an unusual acknowledgement. The U.S.-based human rights activist news agency, though relied on by Israel and other governments, says that at least 2,571 people have been killed, including protesters, security forces, children, and civilians, and more than 18,000 have been detained across the country. But estimates vary widely, with opposition-aligned media claiming up to 12,000 casualties or even higher figures. This is Communications Gap's slow confirmation. Now, Trump has also warned that those responsible for killing protesters will pay a big price, even as he says American pressure, including potential military, cyber, or economic actions, is under active consideration.
Iran is on my mind when I see the kind of death that is happening over there, we think. So we're going to get some accurate numbers. I'll have it in about 20 minutes. We'll get some accurate numbers as to what's happening with regard to the killing. The killing looks like it's significant, but we don't know yet for certain. I'll know within 20 minutes. So, and we'll act accordingly. So far, my track record's been excellent, but you never know.
Do you think it's going to be something kinetic like that, or more like cyber? Or
well, I can't tell you that. I know exactly what it would be. We have to make a decision. But I can't be. Obviously, I can't be telling you.
Now, Israel has reportedly advised the U.S. to hold off on any military strike against Iran for the moment, believing that the Iranian regime is not yet weak enough for such action to result in regime change. Reports from NBC News cite sources, including U.S. and Israeli officials, indicating a strong preference to wait until the regime is more vulnerable. In recent talks, Israeli officials have expressed support for American efforts to instigate regime change, but raised concerns that military action alone may not be sufficient. They recommend alternative strategies to undermine the Iranian government, such as supporting protesters, boosting economic sanctions, engaging in cyber attacks, and targeted strikes against key leaders. Arab officials in the region have also reportedly shown reservations about an imminent U.S. strike, with some expressing fears that such actions could unify Iranians rather than divide them. And the general sentiment in the region is to strengthen internal dissent before any military action is considered. Well, joining us for more on this is Lily Mu. She's an Iranian activist now based in London. Lily, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Khaled. It's a very sad day.
Yes. Well, let me ask you about that, because as you heard, what are you hearing about from your comrades there in Iran about the situation, the latest? Because we have some figures say the regime is admitting 2,000, but others saying the number is much, much higher.
What have you heard? What is the highest you have heard?
Well, as
because
we say, go on. I'm sorry, Lily. Go ahead.
it's an absolute massacre. It's a carnage in Iran. They are only out there to kill the protesters, and the 4-day blackout, they did exactly that.
Right.
It's
Now,
it's a sad day, but it's a day of courage also because Iranians are taking their bodies back and they are saying, "You are the heroes." They are singing and they are clapping their hands in the air and they are saying, "Ba ghairat, ba ghairat." You're a hero. You are honorable. They're not crying anymore. This is a battle cry. And the battle cry is loud and it's being heard and echoed all across Iran, echoing through the Middle East, reaching us out here in the world. King Reza Pahlavi, Donald Trump, help us. Iranians are not giving up. They are losing their children right now. They're losing their parents right now. That is
right.
what's happening in Iran right
Well,
now.
as you say, Lily, Iranians are saying Donald Trump help us. The question is what kind of help. There is a question of whether the Iranians would want to see military action against, say, the leadership, against some of the institutions at this time. Others say that may not be effective now. What do the Iranian people want to see?
Surgical action against the most menacing actors of this regime. Number one. That capability is there. It's already been practiced. We witnessed it fantastically done against the terrorist, what was his name? Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran. I mean, even his bathroom window was targeted, done. The rooms around the rest of the villa were intact. The capability is there. These regime thugs will go. And that is why Iranians are relying and demanding, and they're calling out for that precise action against the ones who are killing them, against the ones who are coming out in machine guns and actual military grade lorries worth of machine guns, and they're opening fire. You know, in the Museum of Tolerance, as they call it, I just call it Holocaust Museum of Pain and Suffering. There is a site that the bodies of those wonderful victims are rolled together, and the cars are just pushing and pushing and pushing into a mass grave. This has already happened at this regime's hand in the 80s. And
Right.
snarkily, the supreme leader that he calls himself, the
Right.
supreme leader that he
Lily, let me ask you, certainly,
I'm so sorry to cut you off there. This is incredibly important.
okay.
During the 2022 uprising, when Iranians got united and came to the streets, and they started a carnage against our young people, and they started killing, and they can continue to execute up until now. Khamenei came to the international media and he said, "We pray to the same God who was here in the 80s," making a snarky comment at the 30,000 they happily and proudly executed in the 80s. 4 days of darkness, 20,000 and rising. I am not just giving out handout Hamas figures. This time, this regime is dividing the numbers of the dead by 10, and giving it out to the international media, and all of this as riot and with pride, as they filmed it this time. Forever,
Right.
they have to hide their atrocities against Iranian people. But this time they filmed it and they are proudly piling bodies. I have heard statements of Iranians from Tehran where bodies are piled up and put in the streets as display to stop people from coming out. Well, guess what? People are still out in the streets. People haven't left the streets.
Right. Now, as you said, President Trump has promised help, and the U.S. is putting pressure, but really to economically isolate and damage it, it's going to require other nations in Europe, the nation you're in now, the U.K. What's your message to those countries, especially in, for example, in Europe and those other nations that are still doing business with this regime, still providing it with support from outside?
In the same way we remember the Nazis and those who participated in their atrocities, Iranian people will not forget those who shook hands with the mullahs and the terrorists who are now invading Europe. My own life is in danger in the UK for simply speaking out against this regime, even prior to October 7th. I mean, the weakness and the absolute dismay towards national security presented by the leaders in Europe right now is despicable. It's disgusting. There's no other way to term it. I want to say this one thing to them, though. If you cannot stand up and move forward with us in our fight against the regime that has occupied my country, in our patriotic duty to take back our country, please sit down. Keep the name of Iran out of your mouth. We have other people on our side. Thank you, President Trump.
All right. Lily Mu, Iranian activist there in the UK. And, of course, our sympathies go out to all your comrades there who are, as you say, unfortunately, giving their lives, laying down their lives there on the streets of Tehran and elsewhere across Iran. Lily, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And moving on, President Trump is expected to announce today the second phase of his plan to end the war in Gaza. This even as fighting continues on the ground and key issues, including hostages and Hamas disarmament, remain unresolved. According to reports in Washington, the plan includes the creation of a new international body, the Peace Council for Gaza, tasked with overseeing developments in the Gaza Strip. The council is expected to be headed by former UN Middle East envoy Nikolai Mladenov, who met with Prime Minister Netanyahu last week. The reports also say that a Palestinian technocratic government would be established to administer Gaza and replace Hamas rule. Now, the announcement is expected despite Hamas still failing to return the body of the Israeli hostage Ran Gvili and without any public mention of Hamas disarming. Now, just last week, Prime Minister Netanyahu said an understanding had been reached with President Trump that the Rafah border crossing would remain closed until the hostage is returned. That's a key source of leverage for Israel in dealing with Hamas. Meanwhile, Hamas says its delegation has arrived in Cairo for talks on the second phase of the ceasefire. The delegation is being led by the senior Hamas official, Khalil al-Hawa, and is meeting with Egyptian mediators. According to the Hamas, the talks will address the opening of the Rafah crossing, the formation of an independent Palestinian technocratic commission, and the further withdrawal of Israeli forces. Palestinian Authority officials, including Vice President Hussein al-Sheikh and the intelligence chief Majid Farad, met with mediators in Egypt last week as negotiations over the next phase continue. This against a backdrop, though, of ongoing fighting in Gaza. The IDF says Israeli troops clashed with armed terrorists in southern Gaza in an incident which the military describes as a serious violation of the ceasefire. According to the IDF, field observers identified 6 armed terrorists in western Rafah near IDF forces operating in that area. Tanks were dispatched and opened fire. The terrorists then shot at one of the tanks, triggering an exchange of fire. The clash also included targeted airstrikes. The IDF says 2 terrorists were killed and stressed that no Israeli soldiers were wounded. The military says troops are continuing to search the area for the remaining gunmen. Forces remain on high alert across southern Gaza. Well, joining us for more on the situation in and about Gaza is Reserves IDF Lieutenant Colonel Advocate Maurice Hirsch, who's at the center, the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs, the JCFA. Maurice, thank you for joining us so much. First of all, I just want to get your reaction just to the news that the U.S. is apparently going to make this announcement on these steps toward phase 2. At this stage, even as we just said, there is still ongoing fighting in Gaza. Sorry, we're just waiting to connect Maurice Hirsch. All right. I guess, all right, we will come back hopefully we will come back to Maurice Hirsch. Let's go on to other items in the meantime.
Khaled, can you hear me now? I apologize.
Okay. Do we have Maurice Hirsch? Okay, Maurice, if you heard me before, I just, first of all, just want to get your reaction to this, news that the U.S. is going to announce that phase 2 of Gaza, even as we see, as I just reported, there's still ongoing fighting there in the Strip.
Really, there is this clear, stress between the two different approaches. One saying, well, let's move forward no matter what. prepare the board of peace, prepare the technocratic government, and on the other hand, will push off dealing with what really is the most sticky situation. The fact that Ran Gvili, his body is still being held by Hamas in Gaza. The fact that Hamas hasn't in any way, shape or form disarmed or agreed to even relinquish any of the power that it holds and that it is wielding to this day. And so really moving forward, setting up the umbrella without actually dealing with the housekeeping seems to be a very odd strategy, knowing really that going forward, whilst Hamas still exists, whilst there are still 20,000 Hamas terrorists with weapons flooding the Gaza Strip and really terrorizing both the people and the Israeli soldiers, there doesn't seem to be much way to really truthfully move forward and to move on to the second stage of the Trump plan.
Right. One thing that's noted, as I said in the reporting, apparently though there has been this Council for Peace, this oversight body being set up. There is going to be an announcement of some kind of maybe, if the phrase technocratic administration, supposedly Palestinian officials who don't have direct political connections, for example, to the PA, and certainly not to Hamas, but there is no mention still of that so-called Gaza Stabilization Force that is supposed to provide security in Gaza, and that seems to me the sort of the key element here of phase two, and yet that is the element that seems to be lagging here.
That's exactly it. Kind of how at all is any technocratic government or any board of peace going to move things forward in the Gaza Strip whilst there is no force actively dealing with the disarmament of Hamas, no force dealing with the expulsion and or arrest of the Hamas leaders. If you remember, in President Trump's plan, he gave them the option. Those who choose, the Hamas terrorists who choose to disarm and to surrender, will be guaranteed free passage outside of the Gaza Strip. So far, we're not seeing that happening at all. And without boots on the ground, and we know that it's not going to be American boots on the ground, they don't want to see Israeli boots on the ground doing that job. The question is, who is actually going to be there taking the weapons away from Hamas, ensuring that all of the terror infrastructure has been destroyed, making sure that there are no more terror tunnels, that all of the weapons, the missiles, the rockets, the mortars that Hamas had stockpiled and didn't yet use all of them during the war, how are they being destroyed? All of those questions remain, unfortunately, open in the absence of that the International Stabilization Force, which hasn't yet seen any type of real progress.
Right. Nevertheless, the one name that has been put out as having a concrete role in this new Gaza arrangement is Nikolai Mladenov, the former UN envoy. We should note that Israeli officials have spoken somewhat positively of him in the past. We know that Prime Minister Netanyahu did meet with him in Jerusalem, but there was not a meeting that there was no official statement. So clearly, Israel has to, the government, Prime Minister Netanyahu has to walk a fine line here between acknowledging the points that you just made, while at the same time still also having to, in a sense, deal with the Trump administration's determination to at least give the appearance of this plan advancing. So how do you propose that the government, that Prime Minister Netanyahu deal with this situation, interact with this new administration that's taking shape?
So I think we have to point out that the name Nikolai Mladenov is not new to the region, and
right.
And his involvement in this subject is of itself very, very interesting. It was Nikolai Mladenov who was the special envoy for the UN Secretary General when President Trump decided to move the US embassy to Jerusalem. And that is a subject which Nikolai Mladenov, maybe in the name of the UN, not really believing the vile propaganda that he was spewing at the time, was coming out wholly against that. So his involvement in this whole issue seems to signal some type of desire to appease the Palestinian side, desire to appease the terrorist side. That name is as I said, in and of itself, very, very interesting as a choice of someone to lead this progress instead of someone like Tony Blair, who the terrorist outrightly rejected. So it seems so there we're going to see, I think, a little bit of movement. I don't think it's necessarily a positive name or a name that can really bring any substantial movement. I don't think he commands that type of authority. And really the question is, why has he even been chosen in the first place?
Well, as you say, that Tony Blair was the initial name that was put for this position, and supposedly Palestinians and Arabs, the factors in this arrangement, objected to his at least having that. He may still be involved, but ejecting that oversight. Let me just look forward then. How do you see the situation? And you've certainly made it clear that you don't see this new arrangement as viable or just window dressing. So how do you see the situation really developing now in Gaza over the next weeks and months, even as this arrangement is being set up, the situation on the ground?
So I think what we're going to see in the next 6 months is really this effort by President Trump to really stabilize at least the idea of some form of potential future governance. That issue is going to be pushed forward, I think, by much of the international community, which is something which has been, we've seen also this before. The international community, I think, is more interested in the welfare of the Gaza Strip than the Palestinian leadership. And here we're going to see the pushback. We're going to see the rejection of Hamas, of any type of idea of an international force coming and disarming them, any type of other force coming in and taking control of the Gaza Strip and taking it out of their clutches. And so you're going to see really that clash within the Gaza Strip between the international community's desire to move forward and to give, together with Israel, of course, to give the Gazans some type of future hope. And then the terrorists coming up and saying, we are refusing to relinquish any hope, supported by, unfortunately, the UN, many of the UN organizations. They'll be supported by those so-called human rights activists who are so quick to get on flotillas to come across the ocean to support Hamas. But we're seeing their marked absence as the Iranian people so courageously rise up against the terror regime in Tehran. And that's really the war that we're seeing between the desire to move forward and the terrorists and their support, their international support, really holding back and preventing Gaza from enjoying the future that it really should have.
Let me just ask you, since you bring up and we discussed it earlier, the situation in Iran, if we see this revolution move forward, I won't say overthrow, but certainly undermining the Iranian regime, do you think that could have an impact on, for example, the developments in Gaza?
Without question, I think that once you show really resolve to get rid of this axis of terror, it starts in Tehran, and it really does melt down to all of the different proxies. That is something which we're going to see playing out without a question. As much as we can move forward, it's already being felt today, Kalev. We've seen the Iranian economy already collapsing, the ability of the Iranian regime to continue supporting Hamas financially is very much depleted. Unfortunately, of course, Qatar is stepping into that role and providing that financial aid. But the Iranians are continuing on to send arms to Judea and Samaria, to the Hamas terrorists in Judea and Samaria, to the extent possible also to the Gaza Strip. And that's really the tension that we're seeing. And I think that will continue on, possibly even intensify as the Iranians feel, as the Iranian regime feels that the stranglehold is getting a little bit stronger. The last push to sow instability or more instability here will, I think, be high up on their agenda.
All right, Maurice Hirsch, thank you for joining us here on ILTV.
Thank you for having me.
In other defense-related news, Israel and Germany have signed a historic security partnership, marking a major step in joint defense against shared threats, with Israel's leadership in defense, cybersecurity, and advanced technology now formally recognized on the global stage. Prime Minister Netanyahu linked Iran's growing threat to regional and international stability to the new defense and cybersecurity pact signed in Jerusalem with the German Interior Minister Alexander Dobrindt. Netanyahu said Iran and its proxies, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis, pose a direct danger not only to Israel but to the entire region and beyond. Now, this new agreement establishes deep cooperation in cybersecurity, counterterrorism, and advanced technologies and signals a clear commitment to joint security action. Minister Dobrindt called the pact a new strategic level of partnership rooted in Germany's historic responsibility and its commitment to Israel's security. Netanyahu highlighted existing defense cooperation, including the delivery of Israel's Arrow 3 missile defense system to Germany last December. That system, of course, capable of intercepting long-range ballistic missiles. The Prime Minister said the agreement underscores Israel's strengthening ties with major powers, adding that Israel is, quote, on an upward trend in security and international cooperation, despite pressure from parts of Europe.
I attach enormous importance to the cooperation, overall cooperation between Israel and Germany, and especially Israel and Germany on this question of cybersecurity, which is one of the main threats to our internal security and in many ways also our infrastructure and other threats.
And in other news, an Israeli-Argentinian man imprisoned in Venezuela for more than a year has been released and has returned home to Israel. This following an intensive multi-country diplomatic effort led by Israel and its allies. The Prime Minister's office confirmed that Yaakov Harari, 72 years old, landed in Israel Tuesday after being held by the Venezuelan regime since January of last year. Harari had been traveling in South America for business purposes, including to Venezuela when he was detained there. Now, he was convicted in absentia and sentenced to 25 years in prison on allegations of terrorism and sabotage, charges for which Caracas had provided no public evidence. He was arrested as part of a broad sweep in which Venezuela detained around 125 people, mostly U.S. citizens, accusing them of participating in an alleged U.S.-backed coup plot, claims that were denied and that were apparently politically motivated. Now, Harari was handed over to the rabbi of the Jewish community remaining in Caracas, then transferred to a third country which was not publicly identified, and from there he was flown to Israel. On his return, Harari told Israeli officials that he witnessed what he described as severe and harsh conditions inside the Venezuelan prison system. Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke with Harari and his two daughters, thanking Israeli security and diplomatic teams, as well as the United States, Germany, Austria, and other partner governments for their assistance. And Jerusalem has taken a major step amid growing frustration over what it calls systematic and long-standing anti-Israel bias. Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar announced that Israel is severing ties with 7 agencies affiliated with the United Nations, effective immediately, saying they have failed to act professionally, they have singled out Israel, or have become platforms for political attacks. The agencies include the UN Office for Children in Armed Conflict, UN Women, the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia, the UN Alliance of Civilizations, the United Nations Energy Agency, and the Global Forum on Migration and Development. The Foreign Ministry says the decision follows a series of moves at the UN since the October 7th attacks, which have demonstrated a pattern of double standards and moral failure. Israel ended cooperation with the UN Office for Children in Armed Conflict after it placed the IDF on a blacklist alongside terror organizations, this including Hamas, ISIS, and Nigeria's Boko Haram. Jerusalem also withdrew from UN Women, accusing the agency of deliberately ignoring sexual violence committed against Israeli women, during the October 7th massacre. Officials say other agencies produced what they called virulent anti-Israel reports, promoted political agendas under the guise of human rights, or reflected an inefficient and bloated UN bureaucracy. Now, the Israeli Foreign Ministry says this move is part of a broader review of Israel's relationship with the United Nations, as Jerusalem signals it will no longer cooperate with bodies it believes Israel's undermining Israel's legitimacy or security. And I just want to briefly round up the top headline of the day. U.S. President Donald Trump is calling on Iranians to keep protesting and to take over state institutions, vowing that help is on the way. This as mass demonstrations against the Tehran regime enter their third week. Trump said he has canceled all meetings with Iranian officials until the deadly crackdown ends, but he did not specify what form the help he promised might take, leaving America's next step unclear. Iranian officials report around 2,000 people have been killed in the unrest, a figure they offered publicly in an unusual acknowledgement. The U.S.-based human rights activist news agency, which is relied on by Israel and other governments, say at least 2,571 people have been killed, including protesters, security forces, children, and civilians, and more than 18,000 have been detained across the country. But estimates vary widely, with opposition-aligned media claiming up to 12,000 casualties or even higher figures as communication gaps slow the confirmation of those fatalities. That ends this broadcast on I-24 News. Of course, you can continue to follow us on our hourly updates, or just check our app. Just scan the QR code, which is up on your screen. I'm Khaled Ben David. Thank you for joining us here on ILTV.
Good evening and welcome to ILTV Insider. Iran is at a crossroads. Protests are spreading, the regime is cracking down, and the United States is weighing negotiations against military action. For Israel, every option carries risk. Tonight we ask, how far is Washington willing to go? Can the protesters really succeed? And if the regime falls, what replaces it? With me to unpack Iran's options and Israel's dilemmas are Mark Regev, former Israeli ambassador to the United Kingdom, Eric Mandel, founder and director of the Middle East Political and Information Network, and Mossi Raz, a former member of the Israeli Knesset. Let's get into it. Eric, I want to start with you. The question is simple. Are we closer to the U.S. negotiating with Iran, as Vice President Vance seems to want to do, or to it taking military action? What do you think is the trigger that's going to tip us one way or the other?
So President Trump is an unconventional president, and he himself can make those decisions. And that is, I think, what is going to move here. So the tipping point, first of all, for this revolution is going to be when the people in the millions truly don't fear the security apparatus. This is a very different time than previous times, even in the Freedom Life movement a few years ago. The reason it's a different time is because economically they've never been this bad. And number two, there's a credible military threat. So what can America do here? I think the president has chosen to do something. And what he's trying to be talked out of is the kinetic options. So what are the non-kinetic options? The non-kinetic options are secondary sanctions, tariffs, and you'll have to do that against some of your friends, Turkey, UAE, India. Second choice would be their shadow oil fleet, to go after that. Covert, to disable through cyber attacks the state media and the command and control. You have overt, going after the Baji, going after the IRGC. And then you have supporting the protesters, not only Starlink, but you can ask for people to say, I'm leaving the regime. What people usually look at in my government is to see if people in the security apparatus or the army will leave, and we have not seen that yet.
So if Washington does start to negotiate while the protests are going on, do you feel, and Mark, maybe you can take this one, that is going to provide more stability to Iran, potentially save the regime? Or is that actually better, considering, I mean, we're just reading today about hundreds, if not thousands, of Iranians starting to be killed by the regime, opening fire not only on protesters, but also civilians?
It's a difficult call. It's a difficult call for Israel. It's a difficult call for the United States. And it's also a difficult call for the Iranian people. I mean, this regime will massacre its people to stay in power. And until we see cracks in the regime, the hope for change in Iran is, maybe they're good hopes, but how realistic are they? I don't know. I think it's a difficult call. We saw with what Trump did in Maduro that he's willing to work with an authoritarian regime provided it doesn't go up against US interests, and the vice president of Maduro is running the country and trying to make deals with, and maybe she will succeed, with the Americans. So if Trump thinks the regime now is weak, the regime is under pressure, I can get the deal on the nuclear issues that I couldn't get before, precisely because they're weak, instead of waiting and holding out for a revolution that brings in a new government, he would say from a transactional point of view, that makes a lot of sense. They didn't agree to no enrichment. Today, they're willing to agree. There'll be words in there for enforcement, right? So they break the deal, I bomb them, and they will understand that, yeah? Maybe from a Trump's perspective, and as you said, Eric said, he's an unconventional president. So from a transactional point of view, you've got leverage now. You get the deal that you wanted a few months ago. You force them to agree to no enrichment. Where does that leave Israel? Good question.
It is a big question, Mark. And Moshe, I want to turn to you. You know, you've been on the show many times and definitely pushed against military action in various, on various fronts, saying that negotiations are ultimately the way to go. In this particular case, do you agree with that? Do you think Trump should move forward with negotiations if, as Mark said, the window allows?
I must say that I don't know. There are so many things that we don't know about what happens right now in Iran. We don't know what the position of the regime. We don't know what is the situation with the protesters, how many were killed in the massacre probably that this terrible regime is doing there. And I don't know, maybe somebody does know, but I don't know what will be the reaction to an American attack on whatever. On one hand, it can unite the Iranians, like we see many times in many places. And sometimes it might weaken the regime. So I think that Trump has here something that he has to think about, and probably to hear the CIA, but hear people who understand what happens on the ground. And I don't think that the decision is easy. I think this is why he hesitates for so long. But there is one more thing that we have to say. He actually said that if the regime kills people, he is going to react. So now his word is in a question. He has to react. And maybe without his commitments, less people would have gone down to the streets and less people would have been killed. So, all those things he has to take into consideration before taking a decision, attack or not, that it's very difficult for him.
And certainly he didn't specify exactly how many people had to be killed and in what time frame. Speaking of keeping your word, and Moshe, let me just piggyback on that. You know, the Iranian regime threatened that if Trump does attack, that they're going to attack Israel directly. Now, I know we don't know, but based on your experience, would you think that the Iranian regime will carry out that attack if Trump does move forward with some kind of military presence in Iran?
Again, I'm sorry to say that I don't know. It's a possibility. We have to be prepared for that. We know that many times when you are in a kind of mass like they have right now in Tehran and 10 other places over in Iran, then you can unite yourself against an enemy. I'm not sure that we are still enemy for a majority of the Iranians. But maybe it can strengthen them. So it might happen, but we don't know enough. I don't know enough in order to say what's going to.
Well, and Eric, you've definitely been talking about this in terms of whether Israel could actually get pulled in directly or indirectly in some way if the U.S. takes either of these actions. Talk a little bit about what that would look like. Let's say a U.S. strike in Iran one of the IRGC facilities where Khamenei is positioned, for example. What would happen to Israel?
So what capabilities does Iran have at this point of time after what happened in the 12-day war? They have been rebuilding their ballistic missiles, and we know what their plan was if they were left alone, if the protests didn't happen. They can send missiles here. They can activate Yemen, so Israel could be back in its bunkers again. You're already in the crosshairs. They mentioned that basically, these are Zionist agitators along with the United States going along here. But what is best for Israel, what is best for the United States? I think I wrote a piece for The Hill last year that said that a regime collapse is not necessarily going to lead to a good regime change. And what usually happens after a coup or revolution is the strongest party that's left over will make the government. The strongest party here is the IRGC, which basically owns and invests and owns the economy. And they are a combination of true believers and corrupt kleptocrats. And where is this 150,000 person IRGC going to go? Where is up to 1 million Baji paramilitia going to go? Because you don't need the majority of a country if these people are going to remain brutal and are willing to kill tens of thousands. And that gets back to your original question, what is the numbers that President Trump will act upon this? And again, American troops there also that can be targeted. He thought about after Soleimani, American troops were hit, many with traumatic brain injuries after. So if I was Israel at this point, I would be on high alert. And one way or another, this is going to affect you, and whatever the aftermath is going to affect you.
So Mark, piggyback on that, because the aftermath is actually quite questionable and quite potentially scary, as Eric described, for the state of Israel. We know Khamenei, we know what the threat is. If the IRGC takes over, some other leader, or even perhaps the whole society becomes fragmented and there are different leaders, 10 heads to the one headed octopus today. What would that look like for Israel, and should we be preparing, or are we preparing?
So I don't believe that you can have a worse outcome than the current outcome. I don't think Israel can face a more brutal adversary, or enemy, I should say, than the Islamic Republic of Iran. And whatever happens afterwards, I think has to be an improvement. Obviously, I'd like Iran to be a friendly country to Israel, right? In the past, under the Shah, Iran was a friend of Israel. And there's no reason why we couldn't be again. And I think as Moshe said, most Iranian people are very open to a good relation with Israel, and most people in Iran are probably open to a good relationship with the world. And it's this crazy regime that took power in 1979. If they attacked Israel, as you said, and is not impossible, I'm not sure it's probable, I think Israel will then have legitimacy to hit back hard, to hit back against regime targets. Obviously, they can hurt us, but we can hurt them much more. And I think their ability to hurt us has been limited since the 14th Day War. And I think if they start something, we can finish it much stronger. I think also if we go for regime targets, if we go for IRGC targets, if we go for, let's say, the prisons, to allow prisoners to escape and so forth, I think we could actually help the revolution there. But the tough decision really, which lies with Trump at this, I mean, if they attack us, it's no decision, no brainer. We have to respond and respond forcefully. But if the decision is still in Washington, the tough decision for President Trump is, one, do I put all my support behind the people overthrowing the regime, which would be the best outcome, yes? Or do I say the regime's probably going to survive anyway, high probability, and therefore better make the best deal I can with the existing regime, like I've done with Venezuela. And on the final point, and Moshe said this, we have to, a lot of people think we don't know, and it's about making decisions with not knowing all the facts. And I hope that when Prime Minister Netanyahu reads what his intelligence community is saying and what President Trump gets from the CIA and others, that they're making the decisions based on knowledge.
Do you believe that the protesters have a chance? You said it's a low probability that there will be a new regime. Do you believe that this protest is going to end like the previous ones and you're not going to see regime change?
So once again, I don't see the intelligence. Obviously, we'd like to see the protesters succeed. And the big advantages the protesters had, as Eric said, one, the economic situation is just so terrible in Iran. People are suffering, right? I mean, you look at the rial, their currency, it's like falling in the toilet, right? there's not energy, there's not water. There's all these day-to-day problems with people who are just suffering economically under one of the countries that should be one of the richest countries on the planet. The regime lacks legitimacy, right? In the past, maybe the Ayatollah regime had a certain amount of legitimacy with its ideology. I would argue their situation is worse than the communists when the Soviet Union fell apart. No one believes in the ideology of the regime. We see that mosques in Iran have become the targets of the protesters, because they are associated with the regime. They're not seen as, people don't believe in the ideology. And finally, all autocracies, doesn't matter if they're left-wing, right-wing, religious, secular, all autocracies survive off the fear of their people. Machiavelli famously wrote, a leader can be loved or feared. It's good to be both, but if you have to choose one, choose to be feared. All autocracies need to be feared. Because of what we did in the 12-Day War together with the United States, the regime was exposed as being weak. And that maybe empowers the protesters in a way we haven't seen in the past.
Now, I want to turn to a key figure here in all of this, which is Raza Pahlavi, who's been calling for the unrest. He's obviously living in the United States while trying to help to feed the fire, make the flame bigger in Iran, call the people out to the streets. Do you think that he is the right person to take over in Iran? And also, do you think it's appropriate for somebody who's sitting so many thousands of miles away, his life is not at risk while he's sitting in the United States, to be pushing these protesters out to the streets and risking their own lives?
It is not for me to decide, but we know from the history about many leaders, even in democratic states, that were pushed out because they were afraid to their life. And when the regime collapsed, they came. By the way, Khomeini is the same, but not only there. You can mention Willy Brandt in Germany and many other places. But this is for the Iranians to decide. I guess most of them would prefer somebody else, but they are so desperate about this regime that they're willing to accept him. It's way better than what they have right now. I don't think that the kind of protest that we see is because of him. I think it's because of many reasons. They fed up from this regime for many years, and then comes the economic problems and the fact that Iran has no connection to the world for years, not only now with the internet block. So there are many reasons for the Iranians to go out to protest, and I don't think that they are waiting for him to tell them where to go. Probably they know way better than him what are their problems, how Iranians look like, and probably in many of the cities that the protests took place in even never visited.
For sure. And I think that the question isn't necessarily, are they waiting for him? But the idea of, Eric, this external opposition leadership, is that putting the protests more at risk, or is it making them stronger? The narrative is often the way that the story is told. It doesn't really matter what's truth on the grounds anymore in this day and age. And Reza has been able to make the headlines, and it appears to be as if he's leading somehow inside Iran, despite the fact that he's nowhere near what is happening. What are your thoughts about him as a potential leader in the future, and do you think that it's helping or hurting the protesters?
So I've been talking with Iranian dissidents in the external community, and they have been in disarray, and there's been quite a few who have not been in favor of being with the prince. And internally, there also is not one leader that has come up, which is something for a revolution is not necessarily a good thing. And also, Americans don't understand that half of Iran are minorities, Azeris, Kurds, Turks, Baluchs, so many different groups. But if there's one figure that we know here who could be a next Shah, if he takes the path of what the king did after the fall of Franco in Spain, and you had a figurehead who then led to a transition, which is what he says he wants to do, and enough people believe him because there are no other alternatives, then that could be a good thing. The question is going to be, no matter who is there, and even if it's him, because he will get blamed or not, is who's going to fix the economics, which is what brought the Bazaris out. Bazaris are a conservative group who actually started the '79 revolution, and they're the ones who started the protests here. So who are they going to believe? They may go back to an autocracy after that part. So is he good or not good? That's again up to, as you said, it's to the Iranian people. But He has not yet had a meeting with Trump, as far as I know. Well, by the time the show is over, we may find out. But that would give him a certain legitimacy. And I also read some Persian people from Iran who were saying that, he's not who we want. We remember what the Shah did. But yet there's still, because it's so long ago that it was, there's a nostalgia that things were better when the Shah was there. And that's what they're basically emphasizing. So he has a chance to truly be a leader.
And do the people, Mark, really remember it being better? You know, I think about Gaza, for example, 20 years under Hamas rule. And most of the people living in Gaza adhere to Hamas because that's what they know. Not that they are Hamas necessarily. I'm not saying they're not civilians, but this is the way they were brought up, the school books they were trained with. Is it any different in Iran?
Apparently so, because you're seeing these protests, and especially young people protesting. And it's interesting, the communists ran Poland for, 40 years, and then the communist regime fell and there were no communists left in Poland. It could be the same in Iran, right? They have no popular support. They have no legitimacy. People don't believe in the ideology of the regime. And so it might not be like Gaza at all. It could be a situation that the regime falls, you see something new shoot up, something hopefully much more positive. As to the Crown Prince, it's very difficult to seriously evaluate what his level of support is. I don't know. But I do know this. If you have various opposition groups and they need someone that they can unite around, maybe they can unite around him. I mean, the truth is we saw that he said publicly on 6 o'clock in the evening, Tehran time, go out in the street and protest. And people did. It didn't mean that everyone who protested was a monarchist and supports his return. It means, though, they accept him as some sort of figure that they can unite around. And maybe your Franco example is a good one. The question is, and once again, will these protests lead to regime change? Which, of course, we all hope they do. That's the best solution for everybody, right? Or do they lead to a situation where the regime stays in power and weakened, and then Trump is saying, well, if that happens, I'm going to use it to get that nuclear deal that we've been wanting for such a long time?
Mark, what is the best outcome that we can see? Obviously, barring regime change, maybe I should ask it differently. What is the least bad outcome that we can expect when all of the dust settles?
So you're right. The best outcome is the regime falls and Iran becomes a normal country and we can have a good relationship with them and they have a good relationship with their, and that's good for the Iranian people there and so forth. The second outcome, which is better but still not good, is that somehow the regime is like maybe with Maduro, there's a change in the regime. It's still an authoritarian country, maybe still run by the extremist elements, but more pragmatic. They've agreed to some sort of deal with the Americans. They're not as aggressive. They spend, because of the crisis they went through, they spend more of their energy and their resources and their attention on internal problems in Iran and less on Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthis and so forth. And between those two outcomes, it's a lot of grey, yes. I would argue, yes, the weakening of the Iranian regime in itself is a plus, and the Iranian regime is going to come out of this weaker, so that's in itself a plus. If there's a chance for serious regime change, that's such a game changer. That's so important for the people of Iran, for Israel, for all the countries of the region, for the world, that Iran would have a normal government. To paraphrase Carville, who famously said in the presidential campaign of 1992, it's the economy stupid, and Clinton won on that basis. It's the regime stupid, right? That's the fundamental problem. There's no reason why Iran should be fighting with the world. There's no reason why Israel and Iran are enemies. It's the regime stupid.
Eric, we're running out of time, really, in 1 minute or less. Give our viewers something to think about. What is the final sentiment that you think people should close up the show with?
So I think what the Iranian people are talking about now is long live Iran. It's not about anti-America, anti-Israel. My country, we're loath to be about in the nation building business after Iraq and Afghanistan, but that would be a mistake. Each is different. And so the hope is that America is not just going to help precipitate a collapse and not be there to help the Iranian people going on, because it is going to be a bumpy ride.
Thank you so much. Now, unfortunately, we are out of time, but I really do want to thank our guests, Moshe, Raz, Mark, and Eric. Thank you so much for being here today. If you found this discussion valuable, please check out the ILTV podcast for a further series of in-depth interviews on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Ayan Hoffman. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Nearly 30 American college student leaders from diverse faith backgrounds are ringing in the new year in Israel while participating in Jewish National Fund USA's Caravan for Democracy. The 7-day fully subsidized program equips attendees with the confidence to return to their college campuses and advocate for informed, constructive dialogue about Israel and the Middle East with their peers. Joining us today are two Caravan for Democracy students to share their experiences, Andrew Norton and Polly Johnston. Thank you so much for being here. Andrew, let's start with you. Why did you, as a non-Jewish student leader, want to come to Israel at this particular time?
Reasons. First one is this is the Holy Land. I want to see it as a devout Christian where my faith comes from, right? I want to see the Bible come alive. I want to see the steps and the places and the things that make my faith so true, much more than believing. And this is the place to do that. And so that was the first reason. And secondly, it is, of course, to understand truly the Jewish side of this war, to understand the Israeli side of this war, to understand kind of just the reality of what's happening over here. I find myself in conversation with students from all different races and places. And I often see that they have opinions and they have arguments and they want to talk and debate. And I kind of hit an information block. And that information block comes when you haven't physically seen, you haven't physically viewed the place that you're thinking about, the place that you're talking about, the place that you're trying to strive and defect. And so that was one of the reasons, in addition to my faith, that I wanted to come out and truly see Israel.
And you, Polly?
Very much the same situation, but also I think there's no better time to come to Israel. We are just getting out of the post-war issues and also awaiting the last hostage to come home. And I think that's a really important thing because now we can see the life and the joy and the resilience of the Israeli people and how connected everyone is. But also back home, I have a lot of Jewish friends and family friends. So this is very personal as well, especially knowing that some friends are here in Israel right now.
Polly, what has been the most surprising part of your experience?
I think one of the most surprising parts is how joyful and kind everyone is. I think we back home in the United States are given this one perception that Israel is very similar. Everyone's the same. Everyone comes from the same background, and it's very oppressive and cruel. And that's just not the case at all. Everyone has their own opinions, and everyone comes from a different background, and they have different reasons for why they believe in what they believe. And they're not afraid to tell you, and it's absolutely wonderful.
Andrew, how will Caravan for Democracy impact you as a leader and an ally when you return to campus?
Perception. I think that I'm thankful to Jewish National Fund, first off, for this opportunity. And in this opportunity, one of the things they talked about was you're going to physically see this perspective that's going to be able to handle and guide your conversation back home. And so that's truly what it's done. Out here, Caravan for Democracy has quite literally caravaned us across Israel to see just all the different places, the points for more than just the Jewish religion, all of them, including our own. And so it's one of those things where you can truly now see, understand, have lived it, have experienced it to a degree that helps carry and guide this conversation towards a reality that we seek, right? A reality that offers peace, that offers safety, that offers respect for Jewish students, Jewish people, the religion as a whole, as well as the entire country of Israel.
Polly, what's one thing about Israel that you want to make sure your peers know?
Honestly, I want to make sure that they know everyone is connected and everyone is affected by what happens to the state of Israel and to the people of Israel. I don't think people back home understand quite how fully connected everyone is and how well people can get along despite their differences.
And you, Andrew?
Yeah, I think that what we really want to bring home is kind of also the opportunity for people to kind of strive and engage in conversation more. Engage in conversation that directs people towards the reality truth, right? I talked about the perspective and things like that I love. And so that's something that I learned here is really just the perspective that says, man, this is a welcoming group of people. This is the home of three religions. This is a land that offers and wants and seeks peace with everything. And so that's the one thing I want to be able to share, bring to people, and kind of pass forward.
Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As the largest provider of Israel engagement programs in the U.S., Jewish National Fund USA inspires a lifelong Zionist identity through youth, travel, and cultural experiences, helping individuals stay connected to the land and people of Israel for life. The organization also offers high school and college students of all backgrounds the opportunity to experience Israel in diverse ways that extend far beyond the classroom. To learn more, visit jnf.org.
ILTV News, your source for Israel in English. Reporting from the ground where it happens, as it happens. An authentic, trusted voice in daily Israel news. Airing on 11 international TV channels and now launching a 24/7 Israeli news channel. Reaching millions every month across all social platforms. Independent, real, powered by truth. We don't just report, we connect. Thanks to a worldwide community that stands for truth. This is ILTV, your source for Israel in English.
Israel's only English news channel, bringing you the headlines that matter every hour, straight from the center of where it's all unfolding.
Welcome back to ILTV on the Hour. We are live from Israel, bringing you the biggest headlines of the region. I'm Caleb Ben David, and here is your roundup of the latest developments. U.S. President Donald Trump is calling on Iranians to keep protesting and to take over state institutions, vowing that help is on the way as mass demonstrations against the Tehran regime enter their third week. Trump said he has canceled all meetings with Iranian officials until the deadly crackdown ends, but he did not specify what form the help he promised might take, leaving America's next steps unclear. Iranian authorities report around 2,000 people killed in the uprising, a figure they offered publicly in an unusual acknowledgement. The U.S.-based human rights activist news agency relied on by Israel and other governments says that at least 2,571 people have been killed so far, including protesters, security forces, children, and civilians. And more than 18,000 have been detained across the country. But estimates vary widely, with the opposition-aligned media claiming that up to 12,000 casualties or even higher figures as communication gaps slow confirmation. Trump has also warned that those responsible for killing protesters will pay a big price, even as he says American pressure, including potential military, cyber, or economic actions, is under active consideration.
Iran is on my mind when I see the kind of death that is happening over there, we think. So we're going to get some accurate numbers. I'll have it in about 20 minutes. We'll get some accurate numbers as to what's happening with regard to the killing. The killing looks like it's significant, but we don't know yet for certain. I'll know within 20 minutes. So, and we'll act accordingly. So far, my track record's been excellent, but you never know.
Something kinetic like that, or more like cyber? Or
well, I can't tell you that. I know exactly what it would be. We have to make a decision. But I can't be. Obviously, I can't be telling you.
Israel has reportedly advised the U.S. to hold off on any military strike against Iran, believing that the Iranian regime is not yet weak enough for such action to result in regime change. Reports from NBC News cite sources, including U.S. and Israeli officials, indicating a strong preference to wait until the regime is more vulnerable. In recent talks, Israeli officials have expressed support for American efforts to instigate regime change, but raised concerns that military action alone may not be sufficient. They recommended alternative strategies to undermine the Iranian government, such as supporting protesters, boosting economic sanctions, engaging in cyber attacks, and targeted strikes against key leaders. Arab officials have also reportedly shown reservations about an imminent U.S. strike, with some expressing fears that such actions could unify Iranians rather than divide them. The general sentiment in the region is to strengthen internal dissent before any military action is considered. Also, President Trump is expected to announce today the second phase of his plan to end the war in Gaza, even as fighting continues on the ground and some key issues, including hostages and Hamas disarmament, remain unresolved. According to reports in Washington, the plan includes the creation of a new international body, the Peace Council for Gaza, tasked with overseeing developments in the Strip. The council is expected to be headed by the former UN Middle East envoy Nikolai Mladenov, who met with Prime Minister Netanyahu last week. The reports also say a Palestinian technocratic government would be established to administer Gaza and replace Hamas rule. Now, the announcement is expected despite Hamas still failing to return the body of Israeli hostage Ran Gvili, and without any public mention of Hamas disarming. Just last week, Prime Minister Netanyahu said an understanding had been reached with President Trump that the Rafah border would remain closed until the hostages return, a key source of leverage for Israel in dealing with Hamas. And that ends this update on ILTV. Of course, you can continue to follow us on the channel, or check out our app. There's the barcode on your screen. I'm Khaled Ben David. Thank you for joining us here on ILTV.
Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Ladar Gravelazi, and coming up in today's newscast. The death toll continues to rise in Iran. Will the United States intervene? A new report reveals Israel came close to striking Iran twice in recent weeks. And the IDF reveals its new 5-year plan, here where the Army believes the next threat will come from. We open again with Iran, where the death toll from anti-government protests continues to rise dramatically. Demonstrators are looking to Washington for help as urgent consultations are taking place today at the White House over President Trump's promised response to the regime's deadly crackdown. The White House says diplomacy remains an option, but warns Tehran not to underestimate President Trump's readiness to use military force. More from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
The White House says that while President Trump prefers diplomacy, he is unafraid to use lethal force if necessary. The White House spokesperson said Iran is sending quite different messages to Washington in private than it's delivering publicly. A sign, she said, that the regime fully understands Trump's resolve and that the killing of protesters must stop.
Well, I think one thing President Trump is very good at is always keeping all of his options on the table. And airstrikes would be one of the many, many options that are on the table for the commander-in-chief. Diplomacy is always the first option for the president. He's told all of you last night that what you're hearing publicly from the Iranian regime is quite differently from the messages the administration is receiving privately. And I think the president has an interest in exploring those messages. However, with that said, the president has shown he's unafraid to use military options if and when he deems necessary, and nobody knows that better than Iran.
Inside the administration, the Wall Street Journal reports that Vice President J.D. Vance is leading a push to give diplomatic talks with Iran a chance before any military strike. However, U.S. officials say President Trump has not made a final decision and currently leans toward military action, with some scenarios including striking first and talking later. The debate comes as Iran's protests are in their third week, with human rights groups reporting 646 killed and more than 10,000 arrested. Despite the brutal crackdown, demonstrations, strikes, and civil disobedience continue across the country. Video from Iran show bodies in morgues and security forces flooding the streets. Reports say President Trump has asked for final plans and proposals with options including diplomacy, economic pressure, and direct military action, including airstrikes. Adding to the pressure, Trump announced that any country doing business with Iran will face 25% tariff on trade with the United States. Iranian officials have been organizing and attending mass pro-government rallies and claim that public support remains on their side. The officials say they are fully prepared for war if intervened with, even as Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has reached out to U.S. envoys.
ما خواهان جنگ نیستیم ولی برای جنگ آمادگی کامل داریم. در این حال همونطور که بارها گفتم ما برای مذاکره هم آمادگی داریم.
Israeli sources warn that Iran's offer of talks may be a trap designed to delay an American strike. In Israel, officials believe President Trump is serious about military action and are preparing for the possibility of a broader regional conflict. Prime Minister Netanyahu has held security consultations while Israel publicly maintains a low profile and leaves leadership to Washington.
And in an explosive interview, a former top military intelligence official says that since the mass uprising in Iran began, Israel has come close to taking military action against the region on more than one occasion. Our correspondent Alec Pollard reports.
As the mass uprisings in Iran continue to push the regime to the absolute brink, all scenarios are on the table, and one of those is an Israeli strike on Iran. According to the former Directorate of the Military Intelligence, Tamir Heyman, such a strike almost occurred already, not once, but twice. In an interview for Israeli radio, Heyman said Iran's preparations for their own attack created a coordination imperative between Israel and the United States, although recent near escalations were the result of miscalculation risks, which in turn strengthened military cooperation between the IDF and U.S. forces. He said an American influence operation is already underway, and this could develop into a military operation, depending on how things pan out in Iran, because there is the possibility of it going in the other direction. President Trump said on Monday that Iran reached out to the U.S. to renegotiate the nuclear deal, claiming Tehran were, quote, tired of being beaten up by the United States and want to negotiate. This could be the only option Iran has to ease their economic woes, compounded by U.S. sanctions. But the less diplomatic pathway is still on the table. According to Heyman, there are two scenarios Israel should consider. If the U.S. conducts only a symbolic strike and Iran attacks, Israel should not contain it and respond. But if Washington mounts a heavy strike and Israel's added value is marginal, Israel should act wisely, meaning not respond. So as we see a lot of drama behind closed doors as all of this unfolds, what's for certain is that the IDF is on high alert for any surprises that could come out of Tehran, as all eyes remain on Iran, watching very closely.
And as the regime intensifies its crackdown on protesters in Iran, Iranians around the world are taking to the streets, demanding change and urging the international community to act. From London to Paris, Washington to Germany, demonstrations are growing louder by the day. Here's a look at how the Iranian diaspora is making its voice heard. India Naftali reports.
Yes, Lidar, we are seeing protesters gathered outside the Iranian embassy in London, voicing support for demonstrators back home as Iran enters another week of deadly unrest. Chanting anti-government slogans and waving flags, members of the Iranian diaspora called on the international community to act, saying communications with their families inside Iran have been cut and the situation on the ground is rapidly deteriorating.
Iranian people are hostage by a terrorist government for over 75 hours now, and we are disconnected from our loved families and from our sisters and brothers inside Iran, which we know that at the moment they are getting massacred and killed by these terrorists, by machine guns. And we want the world to hear our voice and help us.
Similar scenes are playing out in other parts of the world. In Paris, hundreds marched near the Eiffel Tower, holding signs reading "Free Iran" and burning images of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei.
Donc on est face à un régime barbare et sauvage qui veut massacrer sa population à huis clos.
In Washington, protesters rallied in front of the White House, calling for international support and chanting against Iran's leadership.
Hundreds of Iranian Americans have come from all over the United States right here in front of the White House to tell the world that the people of Iran want change. Now is the time to stand on the side of the people of Iran for their freedom.
And in Germany, members of the Iranian diaspora held their own demonstrations, saying they hoped international pressure could help bring the end to the current regime. As demonstrations continue into their third week, Tehran has threatened retaliation against U.S. military bases and Israel if foreign powers intervene. President Donald Trump has repeatedly warned that the United States could take action if the regime continues to use deadly force against civilians. For Iranians abroad, from London to Paris, Washington to Germany, the message remains urgent, a call for the world to not look away as protesters at home face a crackdown with no end in sight.
Thank you, India, for the report. And what's also interesting to note is the lack of protests from the Free Palestine protesters, those who for the past 2 years have claimed they care so deeply about human rights. And yet now, when innocent civilians are being killed in the streets, they remain silent. It seems they only protest against Israel. Any other country where real human rights atrocities occur? Crickets. And joining us now with more on the latest developments in Iran and the possibility of U.S. intervention is Jason Brodsky, Policy Director at United Against Nuclear Iran. Jason, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So estimates now say that over 12,000 Iranians have been shot by the regime. The number, of course, is likely much higher. And with each passing day that the United States does not intervene, this likely and unfortunately means more bodies will pile up. So what are the considerations in the White House regarding intervention? And, after issuing the threat, why is President Trump not acting?
Well, it's great to be with you. I think that the United States has a lot of options to employ against the Iranian regime to protect and support the Iranian people, where there are diplomatic, economic, military, and informational as well. So there are all these tools that we have in the toolbox, and I think the key is to synchronize them in a way for maximum impact. And I do suspect that we will see tangible actions being rolled out as this week goes on. We've already seen the president issue a new tariff for all countries doing business with Iran. And so I think that we'll be seeing more steps in the coming days. I believe the United States needs a multi-pronged effort, one that is concentrated on cyber attacks against the Islamic Republic's suppressive apparatus, targeted military strikes against suppressive apparatus forces as well. We also need economic sanctions to be employed, particularly against Iran's supreme leader personally, his son, and others pursuant to the Massa Act and the Magnitsky Act authorities that Western countries have. There should also be diplomatic isolation employed by the European governments to isolate the regime throughout the world and downgrade their respective diplomatic ties. So there are a lot of options here, but I think the United States needs to lead a coalition of countries to synchronize them and to get them rolled out for maximum impact.
Mm-hmm. The Iranian people are openly calling for the United States to intervene here and to help them. Now, Israel has also thought of striking twice in recent weeks, according to reports, but has held off. The reason some critics believe is that foreign intervention could actually undermine the legitimacy of the protest movement inside Iran. Is that actually a valid concern?
No, I don't think it's a valid concern. That's an outdated and faulty assumption. I think that regime sympathizers have really tried to promote this line for years, and unfortunately, as a result, I see some U.S. policymakers and others echoing it. This is something that the Iranian people have been asking for. They've been asking for U.S. support, and so I think that we have to listen to their voices on the ground, and we have to also be aware that recall during the 12-day war. There were warnings that if the United States injected itself militarily, there would be a rally around the flag effect. That didn't really last. So I think we have to apply that to this situation as well.
And now here in Israel, Jerusalem is watching the events unfold in Iran very closely, especially given the nuclear threat and the ballistic missile threat. How does the internal unrest intersect with, the nuclear issue? Does the regime become more dangerous externally as it grows weaker internally?
I think that there is a concern that the regime could lash out externally to deflect pressure that it's facing. Let's not forget, during the last cycle of protests, the Masa Amini protests, in 2022 to 2023, the U.S. And Saudi Arabia received intelligence that the Iranian regime was thinking of striking Saudi Arabia in response to the protests. So that is a very real concern, and I think Israel does have to be on heightened alert.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned sort of the role that the international community should be playing right now. What are we seeing as of now from Western governments? Are they doing enough to support the Iranian people?
Not at the moment at all. I think Western governments need to move beyond tweets and statements. Those are necessary, but certainly woefully insufficient. As I stated earlier, there are a series of options and tools that Western countries have to hold the Iranian regime accountable. Now, they know about those tools, believe me. I think it's just a question of political will, and the time has come for the West to recognize that this regime is completely illegitimate. And I think we're starting to see that. The German chancellor made some very striking statements today suggesting that the regime could fall within days or weeks. That's a very dramatic statement for the German chancellor to make. He said that regime has no legitimacy, and so let him put his mouth where his money is, and for them to actually roll out tangible steps to isolate and pressure the Iranian regime while supporting the Iranian people.
Mm-hmm. And if the goal is indeed a free Iran, a safer region, I mean, what should Washington and Jerusalem be doing more of? You mentioned that at the beginning, but also what should they avoid doing?
I think Washington should avoid getting trapped in a negotiating process with the Iranian regime at this time. I think the worst thing the U.S. could do is to have a diplomatic meeting with Iran's foreign minister at this moment, because it would be considered an external intervention at a time when the Iranian people are trying to dislodge the Islamic Republic. And that would be a disaster, in my view. It would send a terrible message for the United States. And we should be declaring that the days of diplomacy with the Islamic Republic are over, because there is no prospect for a durable diplomatic understanding with this regime as long as it's in power.
Absolutely. So critical days ahead. Jason Brodsky, thank you so much for your analysis today.
Thank you.
Imagine earning your master's degree on top of Mount Carmel, where forest meets sea and where every day brings a new cultural, academic, and personal adventure. This is Multi Experience at U Haifa International. Here, students from around the world live and learn together in Israel's most culturally diverse city, meeting new people, discovering new perspectives, and shaping their own Israel experience.
There's people from different countries, from different religions and different languages. Somehow we are all very similar.
At U Haifa, academics meet real life. You don't just study, you experience Israel up close. Explore Haifa's mountain, ocean, sea lifestyle and build global friendships that last a lifetime.
It's not just a degree, it's an experience. It opens your mind, your network, and your world.
U Haifa International. Master your mind. Live your Israel experience.
And an anti-Hamas Palestinian militia in Gaza is claiming responsibility for the close-range killing of a senior Hamas police official in Khan Yunis, a move that highlights growing internal violence and open defiance of Hamas rule inside the Strip. ILTV's Steve Leibovitz has the story.
The anti-Hamas militia leader, Hussam al-Astal, said his counterterrorism strike force killed Mahmoud al-Astal, identified by Hamas as the head of the investigations department in the Khan Yunis police. The surname al-Astal is common in that part of Gaza. According to Hamas, the officer was shot dead near his home in the Al-Mawasi area of southern Gaza. Hamas initially blamed Israel's Shin Bet.
لا يوجد وقف لإطلاق النار، هذا كذب ومهزلة. العدو بين الفينة والأخرى يخترق وقف إطلاق النار، ومتى رأى هدفا سانحا يعني يغتال الذي يريده ويقتل من يريد ويتتبع من يريد.
In a video released after the killing, Hussam al-Astal displayed firearms he said were taken from the dead officer and accused him of torturing, abusing, and killing Palestinian civilians while enforcing Hamas rule. The militia leader claimed the officer was responsible for systematic torture during interrogations and for spreading fear among Gaza residents. Al-Astal issued a direct threat to Hamas members and collaborators, saying, quote, "Anyone who works with Hamas, death is coming to you." He called on Gazans to abandon Hamas and move into areas controlled by his militia near Khan Yunis, promising security and eventual rehabilitation. The group said it stepped up operations in recent days, claiming last week it had killed 2 Hamas gunmen. Hamas labels anti-Hamas militias as Israeli-backed occupation agents and has targeted their leadership. The latest killing and public acknowledgement by the militia underscores deepening cracks within Gaza and a growing public challenge to Hamas authority from inside the Strip itself.
And Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir is finalizing a new 5-year, multi-year plan designed to rebuild the army, fix what broke on October 7th, and prepare for the next war, which the IDF assumes will come without warning and on multiple fronts. ILTV's Devo Klein has more.
The plan is called Hosen, the breastplate, and its message is back to basics, back to people, and back to war readiness. The IDF's new multi-year plan for 2026 through 2030 is being built directly on the lessons of October 7th and the war that followed. The plan defines 12 core missions, each led by a major general, meant to restore Israel's military edge and prepare for a potentially dangerous future. At the center of the plan, people. The IDF is recognizing that its greatest weakness and greatest strength is manpower, regular forces, reservists, commanders, and career officers, after years of strain, exhaustion, and sacrifice. After 2 years of continuous fighting, the IDF is also ordered to rebuild, restoring weapon stocks, platforms, infrastructure, and training, without lowering alert levels along the borders. Border defense itself is a core mission, preventing enemy buildups near Israel's borders, stopping infiltrations, and responding immediately to any attack on every border, on every front. The plan puts heavy emphasis on air defense and rocket threats, the, quote, third circle and long-range enemies, with Iran identified as the primary strategic challenge. The message from the General of Staff is clear. The next war will be faster, wider, and more complex, and the IDF cannot afford to learn its lessons during the fight. Implementation is expected to begin in the spring permit as the Army continues operations and prepares for what it believes is not a question of if, but when the next war will come.
And today we once again have the pleasure of hearing from Yael Eckstein, president of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, as she brings us the latest highlights and inspiring updates from the fellowship's ongoing work.
Shalom from here in Israel, and here are 2 fellowship projects that you should know about this week. Number 1, meet Galina, an incredible Jewish woman who's 96 years old and still lives in the same small village in Ukraine that she was born and raised in. This month, the fellowship went and delivered to Galina not only a food box, but we delivered her warm clothing, blankets, medicine, everything she needs to survive the winter. Suddenly, she sits alone in her home in Ukraine, but she feels the warmth and glory of God, that everyone is connected and that we are there to care for her. Number 2, the fellowship staff recently went to Leket, which saves produce from the fields of Israel and distributes it to the poor. The fellowship partners with Leket to provide soups to the elderly during the winter that we make from these rescued vegetables, and we even provided them with a new truck. This week we went to Kiryat Shmona, which is on Israel's northernmost border. As we pulled up, the elderly, the families came, people took food to bring back to their homebound neighbors. That not only is the fellowship feeding the hungry, but we are enabling others in these most far off, tour war-torn cities to create community and to support each other. Well, there you have it, 2 projects out of so many of the fellowship that you are part of. Join me next week to learn more about the work of the fellowship on the ground. Shalom.
And Israel is in the midst of an extreme weather event this morning as stormy conditions continue to batter large parts of the country. The Israel Meteorological Service issued a rare red alert warning of dangerous conditions from a powerful storm that began overnight and is expected to continue through the evening. Heavy rain and unusually strong winds reaching up to 110 kilometers an hour along the coast have caused flooding in multiple areas, including the Jerusalem region, Route 90 toward Eilat, Netanya, the Judean Desert, and the Dead Sea area. Several people were rescued after their vehicles became stranded in high water. Emergency crews also treated a number of individuals for light injuries caused by a falling tree and branches and objects dislodged by intense winds. Thunderstorms and heavy rain continue in northern and central Israel, while snow has been reported on Mount Hermon and in the northern Golan Heights. Flights to and from Haifa's airport were canceled for the day, with some flights diverted to Ben Gurion Airport due to the strong winds. Authorities are urging the public to avoid non-essential travel, stay away from flooded areas and the coastline, and be alert to flying debris. Officials say the worst conditions are expected to ease later tonight, with weather improving gradually through tomorrow. And with that, let's take a look at the weather forecast. Cloudy skies and rain showers are expected around most of the country tonight, with temperatures reaching lows of 10 degrees Celsius or 51 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow we'll see partly rain showers alongside steady temperatures with highs of 16 degrees Celsius or 60 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channels and keep up with us on social media. That's at ILTV_Israel on all platforms. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Ladar Gravelazi. Be well, and thank you so much for watching.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Good Week Israel, the show where we recap for you some of the positive highlights that have been coming out of Israel from this week. I'm your host, Ivo Klein, and coming up on today's show, the heroes of the Bondi Beach terror attack are honored in a heartwarming ceremony. MedX makes its way to Canada for the very first time. And exciting news for travelers in and out of Israel. In a truly heartwarming tribute to the heroes of the Bondi Beach terror attack on the Jewish community, heroes Ahmed Al-Ahmed and Chaya Dodon were honored at the England v Australia cricket game. Have a look. At the Australia versus England cricket game last night, a heartwarming ceremony unfolded. The crowd erupted in cheers for the heroes of the Bondi Beach attack. Thousands of spectators, along with the Australian and English cricket teams, stood in applause for Ahmed Al-Ahmed, the Muslim man who confronted and fatally shot the terrorist Sajid Akram, and 14-year-old Chaya Dodon, a Jewish teen who protected 2 young children during the attack. Al-Ahmed entered the stadium with his hand heavily bandaged, while Dodon arrived on crutches, visible reminders of the serious injuries they both endured. The crowd gave them a long standing ovation as the names of the 15 victims were displayed on giant screens with the words "Forever in our hearts." The announcer also declared that this attack was an attack on the Jewish community. Leading the procession were emergency service personnel, including paramedics, doctors, and police officers who responded to the scene, some while off duty, all of whom were respected by the crowd. Members of the Jewish community joined in, receiving a strong show of solidarity and respect. The stadium announcer then thanked the heroes in the community, praising their courage, service, and compassion in the face of tragedy. Ahmed Al-Ahmed and Chaya Dodon stood humble and moved. a reminder of the bravery that saved lives on that fateful Hanukkah night. And check out Jewish National Fund USA's Caravan for Democracy, an insanely cool program bringing youth to Israel to experience the Holy Land firsthand in a life-changing experience that they will likely never forget. Let's see.
Nearly 30 American college student leaders from diverse faith backgrounds are ringing in the new year in Israel while participating in Jewish National Fund USA's Caravan for Democracy. The 7-day fully subsidized program equips attendees with the confidence to return to their college campuses and advocate for informed, constructive dialogue about Israel and the Middle East with their peers. Joining us today are two Caravan for Democracy students to share their experiences, Andrew Norton and Polly Johnston. Thank you so much for being here. Andrew, let's start with you. Why did you, as a non-Jewish student leader, want to come to Israel at this particular time?
Reasons. First one is this is the Holy Land. I want to see as a devout Christian where my faith comes from, right? I want to see the Bible come alive. I want to see the steps and the places and the things that make my faith so true, much more than believing. And this is the place to do that. And so that was the first reason. And secondly, it is, of course, to understand truly the Jewish side of this war, to understand the Israeli side of this war, to understand kind of just the reality of what's happening over here. I find myself in conversation with students from all different races and places. And I often see that they have opinions and they have arguments and they want to talk and debate. And I kind of hit an information block. And that information block comes when you haven't physically seen, you haven't physically viewed the place that you're thinking about, the place that you're talking about, the place that you're trying to strive and defect. And so that was one of the reasons, in addition to my faith, that I wanted to come out and truly see Israel.
And you, Polly?
Very much the same situation, but also I think there's no better time to come to Israel. We are just getting out of the post-war issues and also awaiting the last hostage to come home. And I think that's a really important thing because now we can see the life and the joy and the resilience of the Israeli people and how connected everyone is. But also back home, I have a lot of Jewish friends and family friends. So this is very personal as well, especially knowing that some friends are here in Israel right now.
Polly, what has been the most surprising part of your experience?
I think one of the most surprising parts is how joyful and kind everyone is. I think we back home in the United States are given this one perception that Israel is very similar. Everyone's the same. Everyone comes from the same background, and it's very oppressive and cruel. And that's just not the case at all. Everyone has their own opinions, and everyone comes from a different background, and they have different reasons for why they believe in what they believe. And they're not afraid to tell you, and it's absolutely wonderful.
Andrew, how will Caravan for Democracy impact you as a leader and an ally when you return to campus?
Perception. I think that I'm thankful to Jewish National Fund, first off, for this opportunity. And in this opportunity, one of the things they talked about was you're going to physically see this perspective that's going to be able to handle and guide your conversation back home. And so that's truly what it's done. Out here, Caravan for Democracy has quite literally caravan us across Israel to see just all the different places, the points for more than just the Jewish religion, all of them, including our own. And so it's one of those things where you can truly now see, understand, have lived it, have experienced it to a degree that helps carry and guide this conversation towards a reality that we seek, right? A reality that offers peace, that offers safety, that offers respect for Jewish students, Jewish people, the religion as a whole, as well as the entire country of Israel.
Polly, what's one thing about Israel that you want to make sure your peers know?
Honestly, I want to make sure that they know everyone is connected and everyone is affected by what happens to the state of Israel and to the people of Israel. I don't think people back home understand quite how fully connected everyone is and how well people can get along despite their differences.
And you, Andrew?
Yeah, I think that what we really want to bring home is kind of also the opportunity for people to kind of strive and engage in conversation more. Engage in conversation that directs people towards the reality truth, right? I talked about the perspective and things like that I love, and so that's something that I learned here is really just the perspective that says, man, this is a welcoming group of people. This is the home of three religions. This is a land that offers and wants and seeks peace with everything. So that's the one thing I want to be able to share, bring to people, and kind of pass forward.
Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As the largest provider of Israel engagement programs in the U.S., Jewish National Fund USA inspires a lifelong Zionist identity through youth, travel, and cultural experiences, helping individuals stay connected to the land and people of Israel for life. The organization also offers high school and college students of all backgrounds the opportunity to experience Israel in diverse ways that extend far beyond the classroom. To learn more, visit jnf.org.
Last week, hundreds of Jews from across Israel and North America came together to walk, roll, and just enjoy the spirit in Adi Negev's 4th annual race for inclusion, a powerful celebration of ability, healing, and hope. Check it out.
Wow, what a fun day today here at Adi Negev Nahalat Eiran. We just completed 2.5 kilometers of the Race for Inclusion, a race that brings together people from all different abilities to celebrate Jewish unity and strength. More than 400 high school, gap year, and college students from North America gathered at Adi Negev Nahalat Eiran last week to take part in the 4th annual Race for Inclusion, a 2.5-kilometer fun run through the 40-acre rehabilitation village. Participants came through programs including Jewish National Fund USA's Alternative Winter Break and the Alexander Muss High School in Israel. They were joined by rehabilitating IDF soldiers, members of Adi's wheelchair basketball team, staff, volunteers, and residents crossing the finish line side by side. At the start of the race, Adi's Director of Advancement, Ellie Klein, reminded participants that this run carries a deeper meaning.
There are so many people of your age, college campuses across America, communities around the world who are running, do evil things, to promote hatred, promote division. But you decided to be here today at Adi Negev Nahalat Eiran to promote love and inclusion.
For Klein, the symbolism of running here is impossible to separate from the events of October 7th, 2023, when terrorists passed just outside the village on their way to Ofakim.
They want to advance hope, they want to advance healing, and they want to allow us to focus, to highlight on our humanity.
Adi Negev serves people of every background and ability, from residents with severe disabilities to war-wounded soldiers and civilians receiving treatment at the Kaylee Rehabilitation Medical Center, the first and only fully dedicated rehabilitation hospital in southern Israel.
We have so many different types of people who are coming here, all levels of ability. We have Jews, Israeli Arabs, Bedouins, Druze. The bottom line is that when they come here, they just focus on their humanity. All the stuff that we love to argue about, our politics, our religion, our background, we leave it at the door.
For the young participants, the experience was personal and eye-opening.
There were so many supportive, happy people there when you ran past the finish line.
I really believe in helping out this community of special needs and people with all different disabilities, so I want to be here and show my support for them.
As music played and a dance party broke out at the finish line, the message was clear: everyone belongs.
I think being able to do something that so many people with disabilities normally wouldn't be able to do, like running, is so incredible because, we're making it so that everyone can do it.
And for many, that joy said everything.
How was it? Wow, that was wonderful, so great. We're here to do the breaks like this. Wow, we did the walks in the road. That was so fun.
And for our ILTV viewers who may remember MedX, the event held by Nefesh B'Nefesh, which gives medical professionals the tools and advice to move to Israel. Well, MedX is back for another installment, not in Australia or in Europe this time, but in cold Toronto, Canada. Have a look. MedX has officially made its way to Canada. Following the MedX events in Australia, Argentina, the US, England, and France, these events, which are part of IMAP, the International Medical Aliyah Program, is continuing and expanding its efforts to bring physicians and medical professionals to their new home in Israel.
We are very, very excited. The International Medical Aliyah Program is spreading across the globe, and we have finally made it to Canada. And it's just incredible to see the crowds of individuals who are coming out, expressing their interest in making Aliyah, and to see just the number of medical professionals. We have almost close to 100 medical professionals who are interested, expressing their interest of moving to Israel and moving their careers and their professionalism and their ideology and wanting to rebuild and strengthen the medical infrastructure in Israel.
So how does MedX address two urgent needs all at once? Israel's healthcare system is facing a critical shortage of medical professionals, while many Olim with medical backgrounds need guidance and support to take the courageous step of making Aliyah. MedX Canada bridges that gap, providing real-time, efficient assistance to medical professionals throughout the Aliyah process. These events have already helped hundreds make the move.
And as we start to ask ourselves, what does the next chapter of our life look like now that our kids have gone off to university? The idea of moving to Israel and having a life in Israel is something that appeals to us. And naturally, we'd want to do that as professionals in Israel. And so we're trying to contemplate what does it look like to move our practice to a new country. So hopefully today's conference is going to teach us about that and demystify some of the aspects of having a life in Israel as a professional.
For Elon and Robin, the journey ahead comes with answers and essential support when it matters most.
MedX has been incredible. I went to their event in New York and they processed all my documents. And then actually last week I flew to Israel and took my licensing exam for physiotherapy. So God willing, by the time I arrive in Israel, I'll actually have my license ready to go, can hit the ground running, can start working. So they've been incredible, super helpful. Any glitches that came up, they right away had an easy access to the right people and they dealt with it.
Some attendees aren't just focused on starting their careers in Israel, they're also eager to come home and finally be a part of the Israeli society.
The most important thing in life is community, and being surrounded by like-minded people, people who see the world the same way as you do and make you feel like a part of something greater. And my people are in Israel.
Working and practicing and helping the Jewish people, and certainly from a health perspective, giving them our best that we could possibly do, I would love to do that.
I feel the pull of the need for living in Israel and being part of the society. I'm past the age when I can do army service, but I think there's other service you can do to help Israel rebuild itself.
As interest in Aliyah grows, the IMAP program is as crucial as ever. With the focus on the medical world, MedX offers a brand new opportunity of integration and comprehensive support. And some good news for travelers. I spoke with our very own anchor, Emily Schrader, to break down all of the news regarding flights and travel in and out of Israel. Have a look.
Now, it's been quite some time since Israelis have seen reasonable airfares and flight options, but all that is set to change for the year 2026. Let's go now to ILTV's Devo Klein to break this down. So, Devo, you have some good news for Israeli travelers, I hear.
Yes, Emily, that is right. We have a few additions for this upcoming year, but probably the biggest news of them all for Israelis right now is that Arkia Airlines have launched the first ever direct flight from Tel Aviv to Hanoi, Vietnam. This is major news for Israelis who we know absolutely love Southeast Asia, and now they actually don't need to succumb to the El Al monopoly. They actually have a reasonably priced direct flight as another option. But that's actually not all. See, budget airline Wizz Air are expanding their flight to Tel Aviv with brand new locations now on the map, like the Balkans, the UAE, Morocco, and others. Now, what does all this news mean? Well, more options means increased competition, which also leads to lower airfares, which is so crucial in Israel right now, particularly to Europe and the Eastern Mediterranean. But what about the transatlantic lines? Well, Delta Airlines is restoring direct flights from Atlanta and Boston, with the Boston route returning only in October 2026, while ITA Airways is resuming 2 daily flights from Rome to Tel Aviv, reestablishing a key European gateway. Now, Emily, you gotta take this news with a grain of salt because some airlines are still suspended as of this very moment. Prices for flights are still astronomically high, and Israeli tourism is still very much down. So while we have amazing news on the horizon, we will have to wait patiently to receive all these new routes and options. But for now, Emily, it's looking pretty good for Israelis. Back to you. And the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange is starting off 2026 with a bang. Israel's economy is known for one thing, bouncing back stronger than ever after global crises like Corona and local crises like, say, a seventh front war for 2 years. This story is incredible. Have a look.
The new year begins with good economic news, citing a falling inflation, a stronger shekel, and continued economic growth. The Bank of Israel has cut the interest rate to 4%. The central bank says the consumer price index fell by 0.5% in November, bringing annual inflation down to 2.4%, with expectations that inflation will stabilize near the midpoint of the target range after a temporary bump in December. Since the last rate decision, the shekel has strengthened more than 3% against the dollar. Israel's risk premium has returned close to pre-war levels, and local stock markets have outperformed global peers. The bank says economic activity continues to expand with strong consumer spending, high levels of raising capital in high tech, and elevated construction activity. The labor market remains tight, but it is showing signs of easing, with moderating wage pressures and fewer workers absent due to reserve duty. Governor Amir Yaron said the decision reflects greater economic stability, while stressing that the future rate moves will depend on inflation, growth, geopolitical developments, and fiscal conditions.
And that's not all. Tel Aviv Stock Exchange is actually now moving to an international schedule after decades of sticking to a strongly Israeli schedule based around the Sabbath, or as we call it here in Israel, the Shabbat. Have a look.
And the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange today shifts to a global work week, moving from a Sunday to Thursday schedule to a Monday through Friday trading. December 28 marked the final Sunday of trading, with the new schedule set to take effect opening tomorrow morning. The move, initiated by the stock exchange and approved by the finance ministry, is aimed at aligning Israel's capital markets with major exchanges worldwide and attracting additional foreign investment. For the past 50 years, Israel has traded on Sundays to match the local work week. Under the new system, Friday trading will end at 2 p.m. in respect for the Jewish Sabbath. The Israel Securities Authority says the old schedule created a significant gap with global markets, making it harder for foreign investors to operate in real time and reducing Israel's appeal as a liquid global financial hub. Regulators say the change is part of a broader strategy to modernize the market, including allowing reporting in English and encouraging global listings.
And just before we wrap up, a huge shout out once again to Deni Avdia, who is still breaking records and reaching new achievements for Israelis in the world of basketball. Let's see.
A proud moment for Israeli basketball, as Deni Avdia has been named the NBA's Western Conference Player of the Week. The Israeli forward is enjoying a breakout season with the Portland Trail Blazers, and this latest honor confirms his rise among the league's elite. Over the past week, Avdia put up staggering numbers, a 34-point performance followed by a triple-double in back-to-back games. He averaged nearly 27 points, more than 8 rebounds, and almost 10 assists per game. Avdia is among the top vote-getters ahead of the NBA All-Star Game, an unprecedented achievement for an Israeli player. The All-Star selections will be announced next week, and Deni is expected to be on the team. From Tel Aviv to Portland, Deni Avdia is making basketball history and putting an Israeli player at the front of the NBA stage.
Well, that is all for today's Good Week Israel. I hope we've helped to deliver some positive news that you get to now take with you into this week ahead. As always, I am Devo Klein. Take care, and thank you so much for watching.
And moving on, hundreds of Jews from across Israel and North America closed out 2025 not with speeches, but with action. Running, rolling, and walking together in the Negev. They took part in Adi's 4th annual Race for Inclusion, a powerful celebration of ability, healing, and hope.
Wow, what a fun day today here at Adi Negev Nahalat Eiran. We just completed 2.5 kilometers of the Race for Inclusion, a race that brings together people from all different abilities to celebrate Jewish unity and strength. More than 400 high school, gap year, and college students from North America gathered at Adi Negev, Nahalat Iran last week to take part in the 4th annual Race for Inclusion, a 2.5-kilometer fun run through the 40-acre rehabilitation village. Participants came through programs including Jewish National Fund USA's Alternative Winter Break and the Alexander Muss High School in Israel. They were joined by rehabilitating IDF soldiers, members of Adi's wheelchair basketball team, staff, volunteers, and residents crossing the finish line side by side. At the start of the race, Adi's Director of Advancement, Ellie Klein, reminded participants that this run carries a deeper meaning.
There are so many people of your age, college campuses across America, communities around the world who are running, do evil things, to promote hatred, promote division. But you decided to be here today at Adi Negev Nahalat Iran to promote love and inclusion.
For Klein, the symbolism of running here is impossible to separate from the events of October 7th, 2023, when terrorists passed just outside the village on their way to Ofakim.
They want to advance hope, they want to advance healing, and they want to allow us to focus, to highlight on our humanity.
Adi Negev serves people of every background and ability, from residents with severe disabilities to war-wounded soldiers and civilians receiving treatment at the Kali Rehabilitation Medical Center, the first and only fully dedicated rehabilitation hospital in southern Israel.
We have so many different types of people who are coming here, all levels of ability. We have Jews, Israeli Arabs, Bedouins, Druze. The bottom line is that when they come here, they just focus on their humanity. All the stuff that we love to argue about, our politics, our religion, our background, we leave it at the door.
For the young participants, the experience was personal and eye-opening.
There were so many supportive, happy people there when you ran past the finish line.
I really believe in helping out this community of special needs and people with all different disabilities, so I want to be here and show my support for them.
As music played and a dance party broke out at the finish line, the message was clear: everyone belongs.
I think being able to do something that so many people with disabilities normally wouldn't be able to do, like running, is so incredible because, we're making it so that everyone can do it.
And for many, that joy said everything.
How was it? Wow, that was wonderful, so great. We're here to do the breaks like this. Wow, we do the walks in the road. That was so fun, so fun.
ILTV is partnering with Regavim to spotlight one of the most critical issues facing Israel today, the protection of our national land and resources. Regavim works on the ground, in the courts, and in the Knesset to expose illegal land seizures, defend the rule of law, and safeguard Israel's heartland, especially in Judea and Samaria. If you want real data and a deeper understanding of what's happening beyond the headlines, scan the QR code on your screen or visit regavim.org and sign up for their newsletter. Learn how you can play a role in safeguarding the land of Israel.
Thank you, India. And moving on, Israel is harnessing the power of bioconvergence, merging biology and technology to revolutionize the future of food and sustainability. Let's take a look.
The world is facing a crisis of food scarcity, which we already feel in the price of basic food, which keeps hiking up. This challenge is faced head-on with the help of bioconvergence, a combination of biology and technology that produces solutions to various global challenges. In Israel, the groundbreaking approach is revolutionizing food technology and reshaping the global economy. For example, each year, 8 billion fertilized male eggs are destroyed after weeks of incubation, costing billions and raising ethical concerns. Enter Exit, an Israeli startup rewriting the rules of the livestock industry. Co-founded by a neuroscientist and a lawyer whose family raised chickens, the company created a way to determine a chick's sex before it hatches. Using genetics and optical sensors, Exit's non-invasive device scans each egg at the speed of light, detecting 6 specific biomarkers through the shell. The eggs are automatically sorted, saving time, money, and resources, and sparing billions of lives.
Israel has a great innovation ecosystem, which is why so many food tech and other tech companies are mushrooming here. And the system also supports innovation and out-of-the-box thinking and pushing the limits of what solutions can be.
Another Israeli company, Genesee, is tackling global sustainability from the sea. By harnessing macroalgae, they produce high-quality plant-based proteins for the food industry, reducing deforestation, conserving fresh water, and offering a sustainable source of nutrition.
Bioconvergence is quite a complex thing because we connect here engineering, science, biology, medicine, food tech, agriculture, so many things which are coming together, and their actual role is to solve real problems.
Both companies credit Israeli Innovation Authority and its National Bioconvergence Program for driving this new wave of breakthroughs. The program invests directly in pioneering projects, builds cutting-edge research infrastructure, and ensures the right talent enters the industry. By fostering collaboration and streamlining regulation, it helps companies bring products from the lab to the global market faster than ever. Bioconvergence is more than science. It's the fusion of biology, creativity, technology, and purpose. From sustainable protein to ethical farming, Israel's innovators are proving that when biology meets technology, the future of food is already here and knows no boundaries. To learn more about Israel's Bioconvergence program, visit the website.
ILTV News, your source for Israel in English. Reporting from the ground where it happens, as it happens. An authentic, trusted voice in daily Israel news. Airing on 11 international TV channels and now launching a 24/7 Israeli news channel. Reaching millions every month across all social platforms. Independent, real, powered by truth. We don't just report, we connect, thanks to a worldwide community that stands for truth. This is ILTV, your source for Israel in English.
Israel's only English news channel, bringing you the headlines that matter every hour, straight from the center of where it's all unfolding.
Welcome back to ILTV on the Hour. We are live from Israel, bringing you the biggest headlines of the region. I'm Kalev Ben David, and here's your update on the latest developments. The U.S. has reportedly ordered personnel at its military bases in the Middle East to evacuate from certain areas, including at the El Udeid American Air Force Base in Qatar, which was attacked by Iranian missiles during last June's war. Now, this is as tensions ratchet up between the U.S. and the Iranian regime, which has ordered its Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps to a red alert in preparation for a possible American airstrike. Now, all this follows President Trump calling on Iranians to keep protesting and to take over state institutions, while vowing that help is on the way as mass demonstrations against the Tehran regime entered their third week. Now, Trump said he has canceled all meetings with Iranian officials until the deadly crackdown ends, but he did not specify what form the help he promised might take, leaving America's next steps unclear. Iranian authorities are reporting around 2,000 people killed in the unrest, a figure that they offered publicly in an unusual acknowledgement. The US-based human rights activist news agency says at least 2,571 people have been killed, including protesters, security forces, children, and civilians, and more than 18,000 have been detained across the country. But estimates vary widely, with opposition-aligned media claiming up to 12,000 casualties or even higher figures. This is communication gap slow confirmation of these numbers. Now, Trump has also warned that those responsible for killing protesters will, quote, pay a big price, even as he says American pressure, including potential military, cyber, or economic action, is under consideration.
Iran is on my mind when I see the kind of death
that is happening over there, we think. So we're going to get some accurate numbers. I'll have it in about 20 minutes. We'll get some accurate numbers as to what's happening with regard to the killing. The killing looks like it's significant, but we don't know yet for certain. I'll know within 20 minutes. So, and we'll act accordingly. So far, my track record's been excellent, but you never know.
Do you think it's going to be something kinetic like that, or more like cyber? Or
Well, I can't tell you that. I know exactly what it would be. We have to make a decision. But I can't be. Obviously, I can't be telling you.
Israel has reportedly advised the U.S. to hold off for the time being on any military strike against Iran, believing that the Iranian regime is not yet weak enough for such action to result in regime change. Reports from NBC News cite sources, including U.S. and Israeli officials, indicating a strong preference to wait until the regime is more vulnerable. In recent talks, Israeli officials have expressed support for American efforts to instigate regime change, but have raised concerns that military action alone may not be sufficient. They recommended alternative strategies to undermine the Iranian government, such as supporting protesters, boosting economic sanctions, engaging in cyber attacks, and targeted strikes against key leaders. Arab officials have also reportedly shown reservations about an imminent U.S. strike, with some expressing fears that such actions could unify Iranians rather than divide them. The general feeling in the region is to strengthen internal dissent in Iran before any military action is considered. In other news, President Trump is expected to announce today the second phase of his plan to end the war in Gaza, even as fighting continues on the ground and some key issues, including hostages and Hamas disarmament, remain unresolved. According to reports, the plan includes the creation of a new international body, the Peace Council in Gaza, tasked with overseeing developments in the Strip. The council is expected to be headed by the former UN Middle East envoy Nikolay Mladenov, who met with Prime Minister Netanyahu last week. The reports also say a Palestinian technocratic government would be established to administer Gaza and replace Hamas rule. This announcement expected despite Hamas still failing to return the body of Israeli hostage Ron Gvili and without pledging to disarm. And that ends this update on ILTV News. You can continue watching our channels or, of course, check out our app. There's a QR code on your screen. This is Khaled Ben David. Thanks for joining us on ILTV.
Washington just toppled Maduro, and that may not even be the biggest news of the week. Tehran is trembling while Jerusalem is watching, and things are stirring in Israel too. Peace talks on one front, war on another. Stay tuned for Israel Undiplomatic.
Shalom and welcome to another episode of Israel Undiplomatic. I'm here with my regular co-host, Ruthie Bloom. How are you today, Ruthie?
I'm pretty good. I'm also a bit anxious and even excited about what's going on in the world, thanks to, or you could say due to, President Trump's moves. One after the other, we can hardly take a breath in between. And now what we need to know, and I think all Israelis want to know also, is how his latest moves, ongoing ones, affect Israel. What we see, obviously our main topic last week when we were making predictions for 2026, the one thing that wasn't on our radar was a capture of Maduro, the takeover of Venezuela. I mean, who would have even thought of that? And by the way, Trump is also warning other Latin American leaders that they better shape up or they may suffer the same fate. He's also saying that he wants to buy Greenland. But most importantly, I would say if we focus right now on Iran and its proxies, Hezbollah and Hamas. So let's talk about that for a minute, about the protests in Iran.
I want to take one issue with something you just said, Ruthie. I don't think the Americans, it's clear they're taking over Venezuela. I think it's much more open what's going to happen there. Are they going to work with the existing regime now under the vice president? Are they going to go for the human rights activists to receive the award from the Nobel Prize instead of Trump? Yes. It's not clear to me. But what is clear to me as an Israeli, I'm looking, how does this affect Israel? How does it affect the Middle East? I think a very strong positive. Why? Once again, Trump has shown himself that you don't mess with me, and that he is willing to use force when he thinks it's in the American national interest. He's not a pacifist. He's showing that he doesn't just talk, he will act. And that's a crucial message for bad actors across the world, but it's also a crucial message for bad actors in the Middle East. Specifically, people like Hamas, specifically, and we'll talk about it a lot, about the dictatorship in Iran. Because when, a few days ago, President Trump said that he would respond if they start massacring their protesters, yes? That's a message that the Iranians, after seeing what happened in Venezuela, they have to take that message more seriously. And so I think a more robust America that is feared by its enemies, that is a good policy move.
Oh, not only is it a good policy move, but it just shows it's in stark contrast to the Obama administration and then its clone in the Biden administration. Obama said he was leading from behind, and he proceeded to do that. And the whole globe has suffered as a result of of his policies. And because Trump only had one term prior to Biden's entry into the White House, he didn't manage. First of all, he was inexperienced. Now he's more experienced, but also he didn't have time enough to fix all that was going wrong. And what we've seen is that the message he's conveying is that, right, I'm the new sheriff in town, or the old sheriff in town, and I mean business. And he keeps making good on his promises. It's also a clear message. Maybe he doesn't mean it to be, but it's a clear message to the isolationists in the Republican Party, the woke right, those who say that accuse anybody who believes that America should exercise its power outside of the borders of the United States as neocon warmongers. And he is just ignoring that wing of his party, which is interesting because his vice president, J.D. Vance, tends a little more in their direction, if not fully, but I mean, he hasn't totally come out on their side. And it's interesting that he's been quite absent of late. Now, but why this affects all of us, it affects Israel, and it doesn't contradict America first at all. Israel needs a strong America. But let's talk a minute about, while he's doing this, he has, together with Israel, disabled or seriously weakened the Iranian regime, seriously weakened Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in Gaza, etc. However, and by the way, he is encouraging or greenlighting another serious Israeli operation in Lebanon against Hezbollah. But meanwhile, he is brokering and insisting on peace talks between Syria and Israel. And that's worrisome, as is Turkey's preparations to join this coalition of forces in Gaza. So these are two, I think, serious problems for Israel that also are due to Trump.
So on Syria, first of all, I don't think there are peace talks. I don't think anyone thinks somehow there's peace or normalization between Israel and Syria anytime soon. But as we said last week in our New Year predictions, what's happening is Israel and Syria are working on some sort of security arrangement, which will allow Israel to redeploy in southern Syria. And there'll be some arrangements reached about demilitarized zones and safety for the Druze community. It won't be a peace treaty, but there can be security arrangements made. We had them with the Assad regime. Henry Kissinger famously in his shuttle diplomacy negotiated a Syrian-Israel it was security arrangement that was actually, from 1974, following the Yom Kippur War, it lasted for decades. And so I hope it's possible to negotiate such an agreement with Syria. Once again, it won't be peace. Israel will have to remain strong. We'll have to keep our eye on the ball. We can't have any sort of phony hope that somehow the Syrians are going to be good neighbors. But an agreement that they have an interest to keep, that we have an interest in keep, and that stabilizes the border area. Ultimately, at the moment, as we speak, we have a large amount of Israeli troops in southern Syria. And so far, so good. But you can overextend that sort of thing. And so if it's possible to reach an agreed deal, which allows for Israeli deployment while guaranteeing Israeli security, if that's possible, and if you get the Americans to be the orchestrator of the deal, to be the sponsor of the deal, to be the person who is responsible for the deal, like in Lebanon, where America played a huge role in getting the ceasefire and Israel has its freedom of action when Hezbollah violates. If we can get the same sort of thing in Syria, I think that's a net positive.
Oh, but something? It's not true that the talks are just about security. In fact, the first set of talks between actual Israelis and Syrians are about civilian cooperation, not military, not defense and security. Agriculture, water, I don't know, all kinds of civilian things. And why is that worrisome? It sounds good, right? But meanwhile, there are Kurds being slaughtered in Syria as well. The point is, Ashara has not proven himself. Again, I've been saying he's a terrorist and a tie, and, perhaps he can reform. But, it looks to me like what he's going to try to do is pretend that whenever there are massacres of people Israel wants to protect, he's going to play the it wasn't me card. Those were ISIS forces. Those were Al-Qaeda forces. Just like in Lebanon, where the Lebanese army says, well, that's not us, it's Hezbollah. We're trying. So the point is, you cannot trust regimes like that. And I hope that President Trump is not totally trusting him. I don't know. We are also seeing cracks in Saudi Arabia's, all this talk about we're going to have some deal with Saudi Arabia, and maybe Saudi Arabia will join the Abraham Accords. That's not looking likely at all, though you also predicted that wouldn't happen last week in our podcast. But so the thing is that all these really important good things are going on. And, the question is Trump just shooting from the hip, or is he actually establishing an incredible strategy for what he said, the Western Hemisphere? That's where Greenland comes into this, and Latin America, et cetera. A lot of people say, Trump has no strategy. He just wakes up one day and does this and that. However, may I just say that for someone with no strategy, he's done more as a U.S. president than his predecessors in decades. So, I'd like to give him a lot of credit, whether it's, I just can't see that that's by accident. Let's put it that way.
So I'm not sure if he has strategy either, but I think he thinks intuitively, and a lot of his gut instincts are good. He knows that this is a tough world, and America has to be tough, and America has to be willing to use power. And when dealing with bad people, the threat of using power is crucial. Machiavelli, who we all read in high school, yes, famously said about leaders, and he was writing about Italian leaders in the Middle Ages, but let's leave that aside. He said, leaders want to be loved and feared, but if you have to choose one, choose to be feared. And Hamas and Hezbollah, you want them to fear you. Any Israeli-Syrian security deal has to be based on their perception for the Syrians that if they break the deal, they need to fear the consequences. And if America is being one of the auspices, yes, of this security deal, they will fear that. And if Israel is not the Kurds, Israel is very strong, and the Syrians know that. And so once again, it's important for deterrence to work, for these deals to work, that your enemy fears what happens if they break these agreements. In Lebanon, And you said before, there's talk of giving Israel a green light to go into Lebanon because Hezbollah has refused to disarm. And my understanding is correct. There's all this stuff coming out after the Trump-Netanyahu meeting in Mar-a-Lago. Yes, what was said to Israel about acting against Hezbollah? They're acting, obviously, they're in contravention of the ceasefire agreement. They're not agreeing to disarm. They should be disarming, and they're not doing it yet. My understanding of the reality is that we need Israel military pressure on Hezbollah, on the government of Lebanon, so that they move forward with disarmament, and there will be Israeli military operations with the United States giving a green light to that. That means more Israeli strikes on Hezbollah targets, more Israeli strikes on Hezbollah military infrastructure, and so forth. Excuse me. It does not mean, I don't think, in my understanding, does not mean full-scale Israel-Lebanon war like we've seen in the past.
Well, first of all, let me just add something to that. You're absolutely right about strength and keeping the enemies nervous, fearful. But here's the thing, and this is what makes Venezuela different from the others that we've been talking about. Whatever else you want to say about Venezuela and the corrupt government and the drug trafficking and housing Hezbollah and other terrorist groups, etc., Latin America is not a radical Islamist country. They are not Islamist countries. And there's a huge difference between that. And you can have an axis of evil there in cooperation. But the culture is not one of jihad. That's not their culture. Now, why am I bringing that up? Because I think maybe President Trump doesn't grasp that it's not enough to make Hezbollah and the Ayatollahs fear your military operations. They have an ideology which also involves involves martyrdom. And one of the concerns, and I think that this is why Israel is really preparing, is that Hezbollah, first of all, Hezbollah is not going to disarm, and neither is Hamas. There's no such thing. They won't exist. That's who they are. So that means you have to completely wipe them out. But that means you would have to then extend the war. But the issue is, will Hezbollah attack Israel? And will the Ayatollahs in Iran give, one of these kind of Hail Mary, okay, the Ayatollah's packing and getting ready maybe to abscond to Russia if things get too bad. But in the meantime, to fire at Israel the remaining ballistic missiles that it has. This is one of the things that Israel is aware of, that they're not rational actors in that sense. Terrorist organizations and terrorist states are not rational actors in the way that, I hate to use that word rational. They have strategy and they have politics and tactics, but they also have this ideology that goes beyond that. And that's something that Westerners never grasp. And that is why I think Latin America is a different ballgame.
Can I say that if Iran was stupid enough to start shooting rockets at Israel, and their logic would be they've got all these protests internally, their regime is threatened by starting a war with Israel, maybe they can stabilize their internal situation. I would say they are being foolish in the extreme. Because as we saw in the 12-day war and before, we saw that Israel can hit specific targets with great accuracy, and that in our response, we could hit regime targets in a way that will actually make the regime much more fragile and allow the people actually to overthrow that terrible authoritarian, theological, thuggish regime that they have there in Tehran. So the Iranians should be very careful what they wish for, because I think Israel has the ability, and we would have, of course, legitimacy. If they attack us with missiles, Israel can strike back and strike back hard. We can also strike back, and we haven't done it so far, against their oil industry and so forth, creating economic havoc and chaos, even more than there is at the moment. And so they should think twice or three times before attacking us. In fact, in many ways, if they attack us, they solve the problem for us. We don't have to preempt. We can respond, and we can respond very forcibly. And I think America might be part of it again. And who knows? It could actually expedite regime change in Tehran. It could actually be a blessing for Israel if Iran decides to shoot first.
No, but you see, there's where you and I part ways. I think what we saw on October 7th, and we've seen this again and again in Israel's wars and throughout these wars. No, I think enough responding. We need to preempt. And I really think the Israeli army is preparing for that scenario. The question is when you preempt, obviously, right? In a chicken game, you're not going to just launch strikes. But having said that, enough being sitting ducks already, okay? You realize that even northern Israel, where most Israelis have returned to their homes and all that, but the fact is, there are not enough bomb shelters here against, we saw during the 12-day war that the kind of missiles that Hamas had been firing were nothing compared to those that Iran was firing, and even the Houthi missiles did more damage. And there was a huge difference. Israelis who had been in like safe rooms during Hamas attacks had to be in full-fledged bomb shelters and practically live in them during the 12-day war because that damage was far greater. We need to preempt, and the question is when. And because right now I'm hoping we can rely on the Mossad and military intelligence in general that totally failed. The military intelligence totally failed on October 7th at best. I mean, there are conspiracy theorists who say it was not just failure.
Don't go there, Ruthie.
Okay, we'll see. However, they totally failed. They totally dropped the ball, and hopefully they won't do that again. And that means preempting, not just waiting to get legitimacy to attack. We have legitimacy. And by the way, nobody gives us legitimacy even when we've got it. So that is my feeling. And I think that may be why there were reports that Trump was pressuring Netanyahu to launch another war against Hezbollah rather than just green-lighting it, because he may understand that, especially since his tackling of Venezuela, that has a lot to do with Hezbollah and the narco-terrorism that is connected directly to Iran as well. That without wiping out Hezbollah even more than we've done, it's going to be hard to keep the lid even on the narco-terrorism. You know, it's like whack-a-mole. You hit here, and then this one pops up, and that one pops up. We're not done with this war. That's all there is to it.
I never said we were done with the war. All I say was, I think we have to be smart the way we pursue this. Depending on, first of all, neither you or I see the intelligence, what the Iranians are doing, what they're trying to rebuild, what they're not trying to rebuild. I think Israel has to be very clever, and we have to coordinate as best we can with the United States. But once again, if there's talk and, that the Iranians might try to get out of their own problems by striking Israel, I'm just telling they'll only create more problems for themselves. There is a chance, and this is the good news, that you'll see change in Iran, right? We spoke about that last week. There's a serious chance. And since we spoke last week, we've seen more and more protests in Iran spreading across more cities with more people involved, right? The regime there is hated. And the regime there has been exposed, as we said last week, for being weak. And a weak autocracy doesn't go together very well. Weak autocracies are overthrown if the autocracy is feared, so the people stay at home. But if the autocracy is seen as being weak, the people are out there demonstrating. I saw a report yesterday, for the first time, people are protesting, and their faces are clearly shown. They're not wearing masks, they're not wearing scarves. In other words, they're not afraid. That's a major change. Now, we don't know where this is going. Will there be a regime change in Iran or not? Of course, we hope so. We'd like to have a government in Iran that wants to live in peace with all of us and cooperate with us all. In the past, we did have such a government in Iran. Is it possible to get such a government again in the future? Of course, it's possible. We hope. Maybe it's more probable than ever before. It might happen. It might not happen. But even in the interim, let's presume that the regime in the coming weeks and months manages somehow to muddle on and deal with the protests. But even in that situation, they have to be so focused on what goes on inside Iran. They're trying to, send resources to give their people more money so they stop protesting and things like that. Now, whether they succeed or not is a different question, but the mere fact that they have to focus on their survival and the mere fact they're devoting resources to try to bribe the public, to deal with some of the economic issues and so forth, means they've got less resources to help Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis and the other bad guys. And so for all those reasons, what's happening in Iran is a very net positive, even if you don't get regime change in the short term, though I'm sure you're going to get it in the medium term.
I laughed when you said trying to give them money. You know that the regime said it wants to give every Iranian $7.
Correct.
So that's why I laughed.
Maybe $7 buys a lot in Iran. I don't know.
Let me tell you something.
Yeah.
No. Okay. They're out of water. They're out of electricity. Their supermarket shelves are empty, and they're furious at many things. Not only because of the repressive regime that's been going on for decades, and not only because of treatment of women, et cetera, and political opponents, but because they are furious that the regime says, oh, great, you're spending money on Hezbollah and the Houthis, and you talk about Palestinians. What about us? What about us? And all that money you got from the West and all that. And they're furious, and they have a right to be. Now, when you say regime change, here's the thing. People always, Middle East experts says, well, what's regime change? You don't know what's going to come after. It could be worse. Now, first of all, I say, really? It could be worse? No, I disagree. Number two, there's no way that we can let this, when I say we, I mean all good people and also the Iranians can allow this particular regime to stay in power. It is true. We don't know who's coming afterwards. That is true. And it's possible that who comes afterwards also will have to be dealt with. But that doesn't mean you leave these ones in power just because, as I often use this analogy, I always say, you can't always, the choice between Jack the Ripper and the Boston Strangler, well, you have to kill both. It's not a choice. And then there are, now it's hard to tell because there are reports coming out of Iran that are not verified, and we don't know. One report says that the Revolutionary Guards, if the Ayatollahs get toppled or abscond, that the Revolutionary Guards are taking over, and that would be very bad. There are other reports that say some of the Revolutionary Guards are defecting, which would be really good. Then there's, talk of, well, the opposition, there's a problematic opposition because, the main opposition to the Iranian regime is abroad, is in America and England and that kind of thing. They're not actually living in Iran. So you've got the son of the Shah, Pahlavi, and then you also have the MEK, which is, I know you hate when I use this expression. They're communist Islamists. And so they're no good, even though many people in the West get confused by them. They think that Maryam Rajavi, who heads that organization, she's the hope of Iran. No, but we don't know. But what I'm saying is there's no question that those Ayatollahs have got to go. And by the way, we were just talking about this before the broadcast, that Senator Lindsey Graham just said, I think it was yesterday, he said, President Trump won't rule out targeting or assassinating the Ayatollah Khamenei, and he better watch out. Basically, don't try us because, and we know that Khamenei is worried about that because we know it. He's definitely in a bunker. He's preparing in case he has to abscond. We do know that is a fact. It doesn't mean he'll do it, but we know that he's preparing.
So there's also a question they say, why, Iran, the people have protested in the past. There have been huge wage of protests in 2009, huge wage of protests more recently over the hijab issue. And now we've got a wave today. And you have to say, what's different? So number one, what's different is the situation inside Iran is more difficult than ever before, and you talked about the economic issues. What's different is the regime was exposed by being weak just a few months ago in the 12-day war when Israeli planes could fly at will over Tehran. And once again, all autocracies need the fear of their strength, and they were exposed as being weaklings. And the third thing is the response of the West. When you had the big demonstrations in 2009, Obama was very, very quiet. He later publicly admitted that he made a mistake. Now you've got an American president who says publicly, you attack, you massacre the protesters. and you will have consequences, yes? And so for all these reasons, for people who want to see change in Iran, it appears much, much more hopeful, though you're correct. There's not a recognized opposition leader. Some of the opposition groups maybe are not our cup of tea either. But I tend to agree with your overall assessment which it can't get worse than the current regime. I have a question for you, Ruthie. Why is it that in Europe and in North America, we've seen a few protests by usually expatriate Iranians who are out there waving their Iranian flag, saying the regime's got to go, and stop, don't allow them to massacre the Iranian protesters and the Iranian people, and we want to see freedom and democracy for Iran. And yet, beyond that, you don't see mass demonstrations, not in New York, not in London, not in Paris, right? It's only the expat Iranian communities that are out there. What is it that the so-called, the people who are the human rights crowds and the progressives and the college students, what is it about Iran that it's not for want of a better word, a sexy issue that they, if they love to protest against Israel, but what, with all our, we're still a democracy, yeah, we're a normal country, but against this clerical, thuggish, sexist, homophobic, I can keep going with adjectives about what the Iranian regime is all about. And that, quiet, what's going on here?
Well, first of all, we know the progressive left is, hypocritical beyond belief. That we know. And when you say human rights groups, you have to put that in quotes. The answer is that aside from the fact that it's not, as you say, it's not a sexy issue. Well, for one thing, any issue that Israel highlights, that Prime Minister Netanyahu has been screaming about the need to defeat the Iranian regime for years and years and years, that's enough to put the left on the other side. That's number one. Number two, notice that the media, do you realize that Western media barely covering these protests in Iran? Israel, it's topping the news on every news broadcast practically, and our newspapers and everything. It's not even on the front of the New York Times or the Telegraph, and it's just not. That's another reason. A third is when you talk about the human rights groups and the left and the progressives and they are, first, aside from the fact that they're on the wrong side of almost every issue, they are against Trump, they're against Netanyahu. They are, think of how many of those same people were against the capture of Maduro. Suddenly, they're defending Maduro. The new mayor of New York, Zoran Mamdani, had announced that when he becomes mayor, if Netanyahu arrives in New York, he'll have him arrested. Now, first of all, he doesn't have the authority to do that, but never mind his statement about it. But that Maduro is arrested and brought to justice, even though under the Biden administration, a huge bounty was put out on his head. He's going to stand criminal trial for narco-terrorism and drug trafficking and all that. Mamdani was against that arrest. He's for an arrest of Netanyahu and against the arrest of Maduro. So when you ask, how come only a handful of Iranian expats who are worried about Iran and their family and everything in Iran? That's the answer. You cannot turn, and by the way, the woke right is just as bad because they have this new, their thing is, America first doesn't mean, for some reason, America first doesn't mean a strong America internationally. I don't know why. They've totally twisted Trump's whole MAGA philosophy. But that, as I say, here's where the woke left and the woke right meet. It's that horseshoe thing. And it's terrible. But you know what? Israel, we're used to that. We're used to the hypocrisy at the UN, everywhere. We're used to it. And what we have to do is stop caring so much about what is said by that and do what we have to do.
You know what? First of all, I agree. We have to do what we have to do. But I wanted to raise, you talk about university students, so, that's like political theater. What I think is deserving of serious criticism is the fact that it's only the US government and in a more measured way, Israel, in our public comments in support for the protesters in Iran. The Canadians, the Australians, the British, the Europeans have said practically nothing. In other words, from the point of view of all these people who always present themselves as do-gooders and international order, all this, you have this brutal regime that threatens its own people, threatens the neighborhood, nuclear program that without Israel would be very, very, very developed, right? Israel and the United States of America also came in to help get rid of it, right? Terrible regime, supports terrorism, supports aggression, all its neighbors worry about it, and yet silence. Australia, Canada, Britain, Europe. And you have to ask a question, what is going on in the world? And under once again, when it happened in 2009, America also shut up. Now, at least then, the American president said, the then American president said, I made a mistake. I should have said something. He said so a few years later, right?
Excuse me a second. Excuse me a second. One second. Whoa. Obama, let me just correct one thing. Obama, it wasn't just that he was silent. He said we need outreach to the Muslim world, outreach, and it's better. We need to deal with the Ayatollahs. His saying he made a mistake, no, his worldview hasn't changed one iota.
So I was going to say the following. It's not just Iran's Muslim neighbors fear Iran. Iran's Muslim citizens fear the Iranian government. And I think the silence of the Western world, let's leave America out of it, has been deafening, and there's no excuse for it.
Well, you know what is interesting? You're pointing that out. We have this ironic situation where you could say the Arab countries are, some of them, many of them, trying to Westernize to some extent, modernize to some extent, while the West is becoming more jihadist. The West is becoming infiltrated by jihadis, by massive immigration in America, illegal immigration. In Europe, a lot of it was enabled and some of it's illegal, whatever. The point being that the West imported jihad into its own borders, while the countries, the Arab countries and other Muslim countries are trying to rid themselves of it. We're having this weird switch.
I can see on the clock we're running out of time, but I think that is incorrect in this place, because that does not explain Muslim immigration to Western countries. That explains criticism of Israel, because it does not explain European and other Western silence on what's going on with Iran, because most of those Muslims are Sunni Muslims and they have no love whatsoever for the regime in Tehran. I think there's something else going on here, whether it's economic interests, whether it's they can't agree with Trump because they have to show that they're different, whether they don't really care about human rights and democracy. It's only when it comes, Israel, right? Every time, right? But there's no doubt that their hypocrisy has been exposed very clearly on the Iranian issue.
No question about it. Well, I think that wraps it up for today. And by next week, God knows what's waiting for us from the Trump administration. Oh, and by the way, from by the Netanyahu administration as well.
I'll see you next week, Ruthie.
Looking forward to it.
אני כל הרגל שלי פצועה, כל הרגל שלי יש לי חירורים, אבא כל הרגליים שלו, כרמל גם. אמא לא, את אמא עומדת למות, אני אומרת לכם.
Do you want to know how hell looks like on earth? Welcome to Kibbutz Be'eri. 2 years ago exactly, on the 7th of October, the Bachar family was in hell. A 3-meter on a 3-meter hell. Come with me and find out this unbelievable story of the Bachar family.
We were in the safe room. We were 4 persons in the safe room. It's me, Dana. I have 4 children. My old son Rotem, he was in India in the thing. Nofar, the second is 19 years old. He's in the army.
And then you have Carmel and Hadar. And they were in the house with you and Dana.
6:30, The kibbutz with a lot of people. You know why? Because on October 6th, we just celebrate our birthday, the kibbutz birthday. It's been like 70 years. We are like 1,100 people, but in the same day, we were like 1,400. This is the master bedroom. We were here, and we start hearing the shooting. It's not the shooting, it's the thunder, like the missiles goes above us.
That whistle of the missile?
Yeah, a lot of them. So me and Dana here, and we are hear the rockets, and we know something happened. And
It's usual, right?
Yeah, it's usual. But in usual, there are 2 helicopters up, 1 drone, and after 5 minutes, a few missiles to Gaza, and that's it, it's done. This is the usual. But in the same day, it's not like that.
If I tell you in the world that the usual thing is that you hear rockets flying all over your heads and then lands in your backyard, you can't say it's usual. This is missiles, rockets, literally sent from Gaza to Israel, to Kibbutz Be'eri. But the people here in Israel has gotten used to it. I promise you, you have no idea what we're talking about. So year after year, year after year after year, Hamas, the terrorist organization who ruled Gaza, kept sending missiles, launching missiles to Israel.
And I told Dana, okay, there is something wrong. And I told her, okay, let's go downstairs to see where's the children, and because our safe room is in the downstairs. This is Adar rooms, and we met right here. And this room is Carmel's room.
Carmel's room. Hadar, Carmel is here.
When we start to speak to them and say, okay, look what's going on, because all the racket, and we start laughing on ourselves because we thought there was a racket and, you know, like a zikukim, and came to Gaza to celebrate our birthday.
Fireworks.
And the fireworks, and we are and we're going out because we want to see the rockets. And we look up to the border, that's the border over there. So you can see all the rockets goes above all of.
That's Gaza over here. Just 4-kilometer walk. You know, if you can walk fast, it's 6 minutes per kilometer. Then you'd find yourself here within 24 minutes in Gaza just walking. That's how it's close to Kibbutz Be'eri.
And around 10 minutes to 7, you start hear the shooting in the middle of the kibbutz. And they came in, and they start shooting all over. They running through our place and where we live, and they start shooting everyone. And the chat start talking about everything. Also, they shoot these people, they burn this house, they kill this one, and everything in the chat.
Wow.
And,
So while you're standing here, you're looking at the WhatsApp group, and you're literally seeing them just saying,
Exactly.
this was killed, this was killed, this was killed, this was killed.
Absolutely.
In the WhatsApp group, you're getting a message, go to the safe room.
Yeah, go to the safe room because there's a terrorist in the kibbutz.
Okay.
You have to go to the safe room.
And that was 7:10.
We got into the house, we shield the house, and we locked the door. I told Dana and Carmel and Adar, okay, let's go to the safe room. And Carmel told me, wait, Dad. He went to the kitchen. He brought a few hardcore steel knife. He played with them like that. And he told me, Dad, don't worry. We're gonna fight with them.
What's a safe room? A safe room, it is a bomb shelter. So in terms of when rockets are being launched from Gaza to here, you go to this safe room, and plus minus you are protected, even if a rocket falls very near the building that you are in, but only in a safe room. And that's why the Israelis on the 7th of October immediately ran to the bomb shelter, but then you told me that the bomb shelter became a trap.
A bomb shelter, you have to fight on the hand door because you can't lock the bomb shelters. Because if somebody wants to help you, you just open the door.
You closed the door?
We're waiting, yeah.
So you closed the door and you waited here?
We're waiting.
Was this window
Yeah, we
shut?
closed everything.
Everything closed?
Yes, we closed the two.
Everything
there's
closed.
two panels. Yeah, there's two panels. We
There's
closed
also
the two.
here.
There's stock. It's,
Yeah, of
it's
course,
a
it was
perimeter.
shut because of that. But
So
you
we
have
closed everything. We also closed the glass.
So everything was closed?
Yes. Adar, she's sitting here, really close to the wall. And Dana, she's over there.
So, Dana's here, Hadar is
Adar
here.
here.
You
Carmel,
are.
help me. It's around 8:30 in the morning. We hear the bell ringing. I'm standing right here. You know, like you're in stress, like you're holding like that. And Carmel helped me. And you hear the steps on the floor. You know that the terrorists, they're not coming to looking for us in the second floor. They come straight to the safe room.
They knew.
Because of course they knew.
They knew.
They knew because they killed the people up. That means the other in the neighborhood.
So- and they were in the safe house.
They knew that all the people in the kibbutz, they are in the safe room.
Targeting intentionally civilians, knowing that they are going to be in the safe room. This is a war crime.
And the terrorists, they came, they start, you know, like a hand fight, exactly the same. Yeah, they tried to
Arm
open,
wrestling,
and
you know?
absolutely. They tried to open and we closed. They tried to open and we closed. And suddenly one of the terrorists told me, "Iftach al-bab, open the door." And told me, "Go away, ruh, ruh,
Ruh, go away.
yeah. And he told me again, "Open the door." And I didn't even say the second go, a shot through the door. We holding the handle like that. And Carmel, my son, he's standing here.
And is he pushing
pushed
your hand
me
in and out?
About me, he pushed me. So this one, it's Carmel blood from his arm because this bullet took his arm, both arms. Carmel, you know, is with Arabic, so he cursed in Arabic. And he told me, he said, "Oh no, there's no Sri Lanka." Because it's supposed to be in December in Sri Lanka. He was a surfer.
Oh my God,
the only thing,
joked about it.
yeah, the only thing he thought about, it's about the sea, his surfboard.
He's a surfer,
and his
huh?
yeah, he was a surfer. He was a great surfer.
That shot you in the arm and in your legs.
In my legs.
And you keep going.
I keep standing on that. The right leg is died. There's nothing left in the right leg. The left one, you feel something happened to her. You don't know exactly what happened.
Like it's
like
burning,
It's
but
like, you know, when you go to the gym, you feel your muscle a bit
Yeah.
strong. That's how you feel.
Yeah.
So, exactly.
Yeah.
And I saw, because I'm really recognized like that, and look to the floor, and I saw a few tears of blood on the floor, and I talked to myself. I said that, but I'm all right. And I saw that these bullets took my arm, and the blood go from my arms. So a few seconds later, I collapsed and fell into
What time that was?
9:30. 30 minutes later, there are heavy smoke getting.
Around 10 o'clock?
It's around 10 o'clock. It's a heavy smoke.
Where the heavy smoke is coming from?
They brought everything. In the Be'eri, it was a system. First of all, they shot. Second, they burn. And later, when you jump out from the window, they kill you outside in the backyard. It's a system. There's 150 houses like that, or more than that.
אני לא יודעת איפה היא ממליצה, אבל היא היחידה שכמעט מאבדת את הכרה, היא וכרמל. אני בעבוד קצת בסדר, אני הכי בסדר.
Hamas terrorists, the Nukhba unit, which is the elite unit of Hamas, they came first, they did what they did, they left to another house. So now you're telling me that the civilians...
Yes, they gave the mission to other people, burn them.
And they're not like part of the Nukhba, they're literally
I don't know
Gazans.
who are they, but maybe it's not the Nukhba, because the Nukhba, they got the weapon and they go to kill the other people. But they know that, okay, if there is a heavy smoke in the safe room, you have to jump out from the window. And the Nukhba, they're waiting for you here, while they're not waiting here.
Gotcha.
And when you jump out, they kill you there.
So that massacre on the 7th of October, not only official Hamas members, terrorists, took part of it, but also civilians took part in the massacre. And there's countless evidence to that, by the way, which you can see all over the social media of civilians, Gazans, who came to the settlements here in southern of Israel and literally took part of the massacre. They start burning, smoke is coming in.
Smoke coming in, a lot of smoke, a heavy smoke. Everything is closed. We open just the glass window. That's it. We open that one, and you can't breathe. And when you can't breathe anymore, I told them, okay, you have to take the pots of Belka with the pee and the towel, and with the blood, it become like a glue.
Yeah.
And we put it on the face. You can breathe through it. It's easier, but it's not good for a long time.
So wait, you
because
breathe pee and blood?
Of course. You want to survive, you have to.
What happened after that?
The terrorists, they decide to open the window because they saw that we didn't jump out. They decide to open the window. They put a big bomb on the window. If you go for the other side, you can see it. And they explode this fucking window.
זרקו עלינו רימון, ברגל יש לי חור, אני מנסה להחזיק את זה, יש לי ברגל 5 חורים. זרקו עלינו רימונים, ירו בנו.
When they explode this one, the right one stuck in a frame is not moved. But the second one moved like 10 centimeters to the side.
So there was like a gap?
Yeah, absolutely. There is a gap. So for us, it was good. Because
Smoke is getting out.
Absolutely. The hair comes from the door, and the smoke get in, go up, and go down. That's how it's going. So I'm looking around, so we are still alive. We are all right. But that's the good things. The worst things, we got 3 grenades inside. And when they throw the grenade hit the wall here and fell into the drawer.
That's the first explosion here, you can see it. That's the second explosion. And what about the third grenade? It didn't explode. So you had with you a grenade, live grenade, that did not explode.
Yes. You feel like your ears in the plastic bags. That's how you feel. I'm looking around, so we are still alive. So all the shrapnels, you can see all over, all the shrapnels go up, most of them. And the terrorists, they took like a metal stick, like a magnet stick. They put on the grenade, and they wrapped the grenade with metal balls, screws, and needles.
By the way, this is another act of a war crime, yeah?
זרקו עלינו 3 רימונים, כולנו עשן.
And Ada, she told me, at the same time, that's not a real grenade. I tell you, why you say that? Because she's 13. And she told me because I got a lot of screws in my legs. And now we are bleeding, we are 3 bleeding in the safe room. Dana, until now, she's all right. And I'm, bleeding from my legs and in Carmel. But it's all right. But we were on the floor. We hear 2 shots. And Dana told me, I can't breathe. Adar, she tried to clean it a little bit. She told Adar, it's done. And she told us, I don't have nothing for nobody in this world. And she died.
Avida, you knew that your wife died.
Yes.
And you are without legs, with a bullet also in your arm, with a kid who is injured in his arm, they're trying to keep him alive. And you have a daughter that was also hit from shrapnels. And at this time, you realize that you lost your wife as well. Yet you still have the power to tell your daughter,
Mommy, she's all right. She's not suffering anymore. She died. We have to keep him alive. Around 4:30, Carmel, he knew that he go out for the safe room. He knew that. Around 5 o'clock afternoon, Carmel, he got his short breath and he died.
כרמל, תישאר איתנו. אל תעצור עיניים. אמא, תישאר איתנו.
Before he died, he told me, Dad, don't forget. So burying me with the surfboard. And Adar, she saw me, and she told me, Dad, don't leave me alone. Because she saw me, I'm almost gonna die here. And she called 911 again. My dad almost gonna die, what am I supposed to do? And the 911, they record everything.
לא. בסדר. איפה היריות? הן מתחילות מהאגן עצמו או מהרגליים למטה?
Around 7:30, 7:15, the commander of Yalom, he came to this window. He took his flashlight, looked into the safe room, and told the other guy there is a massacre here in the safe room. So if you want to live next to them, you can't. I think we gave them any money, any opportunities. They don't want to kill us. I think they want to live like us, but they don't. They don't want to live like us. They don't want me here. They want to take my land. It's not about something about religious. It's nothing. It's about territory and land. That's it.
You were in hell. There's no other definition to what you went through on the 7th of October. There's a lot of people around the world that either they deny what happened here, and clearly we can see the evidence is countless. Yeah? And of course your story as a first eyewitness that went through hell. What do you have to say to the world for those who are right now supporting the terrorist organization Hamas, literally advocating and echoing the narrative of Hamas?
We have to know that the Islamic here next to us, it's really want to kill us because our land. We can see the Palestinian here, and if you move to Europe, I'm sure it's going to be there also. And we have to keep on ourselves, and for the Jewish nation, I think we have to be in Israel. This is the only state that we got, and we have to keep on it for many generations forward.
That for them, there is no such thing as let's have a dialogue. They don't think about maybe let's hear the other side. There's no freedom of speech. There's also no freedom of religion. That's a different topic. But the bottom line is you do not have dialogue with them because they don't believe in dialogue. They have their own way. You're either with them or against them. If you're with them, your life might be saved, might be saved. But if you're against it, for sure, you're dead.
Welcome back to ILTV on the Hour. We are live from Israel, bringing you the biggest headlines of the region. I'm Kalev Ben David, and here's your update on the latest developments. The U.S. has reportedly ordered personnel at its military bases in the Middle East to evacuate from certain areas, including at the El Udeid American Air Force Base in Qatar, which was attacked by Iranian missiles during last June's war. Now, this is as tensions ratchet up between the U.S. and the Iranian regime, which has ordered its Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps to a red alert in preparation for a possible American airstrike. Now, all this follows President Trump calling on Iranians to keep protesting and to take over state institutions, while vowing that help is on the way as mass demonstrations against the Tehran regime entered their third week. Now, Trump said he has canceled all meetings with Iranian officials until the deadly crackdown ends, but he did not specify what form the help he promised might take, leaving America's next steps unclear. Iranian authorities are reporting around 2,000 people killed in the unrest, a figure that they offered publicly in an unusual acknowledgement. The US-based human rights activist news agency says at least 2,571 people have been killed, including protesters, security forces, children, and civilians, and more than 18,000 have been detained across the country. But estimates vary widely, with opposition-aligned media claiming up to 12,000 casualties, or even higher figures This as communication gaps slow confirmation of these numbers. Now, Trump has also warned that those responsible for killing protesters will, quote, pay a big price, even as he says American pressure, including potential military, cyber, or economic action, is under consideration.
Iran is on my mind when I see the kind of death that is happening over there, we think. So we're going to get some accurate numbers. I'll have it in about 20 minutes. We'll get some accurate numbers as to what's happening with regard to the killing. The killing looks like it's significant, but we don't know yet for certain. I'll know within 20 minutes. So, and we'll act accordingly. So far, my track record's been excellent, but you never know.
Do you think it's going to be something kinetic like that, or more like cyber? Or
Well, I can't tell you that. I know exactly what it would be. We have to make a decision. But I can't be. Obviously, I can't be telling you.
Israel has reportedly advised the U.S. to hold off for the time being on any military strike against Iran, believing that the Iranian regime is not yet weak enough for such action to result in regime change. Reports from NBC News cite sources, including U.S. and Israeli officials, indicating a strong preference to wait until the regime is more vulnerable. In recent talks, Israeli officials have expressed support for American efforts to instigate regime change, but have raised concerns that military action alone may not be sufficient. They recommended alternative strategies to undermine the Iranian government, such as supporting protesters, boosting economic sanctions, engaging in cyber attacks, and targeted strikes against key leaders. Arab officials have also reportedly shown reservations about an imminent U.S. strike, with some expressing fears that such actions could unify Iranians rather than divide them. The general feeling in the region is to strengthen internal dissent in Iran before any military action is considered. In other news, President Trump is expected to announce today the second phase of his plan to end the war in Gaza, even as fighting continues on the ground and some key issues, including hostages and Hamas disarmament, remain unresolved. According to reports, the plan includes the creation of a new international body, the Peace Council in Gaza, tasked with overseeing developments in the Strip. The council is expected to be headed by the former UN Middle East envoy Nikolay Mladenov, who met with Prime Minister Netanyahu last week. The reports also say a Palestinian technocratic government would be established to administer Gaza and replace Hamas rule. This announcement expected despite Hamas still failing to return the body of Israeli hostage Ron Gvili and without pledging to disarm. And that ends this update on ILTV News. You can continue watching our channels or, of course, check out our app. There's a QR code on your screen. This is Khaled Ben David. Thanks for joining us on ILTV.
Welcome back to Axis of Truth on JNS, and Happy New Year. I'm Emily Schrader, and 2026 is off to a wild start with nationwide protests erupting across Iran and, of course, the fall of the Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro. We'll unpack all this together with not one, but two special guests today, experts from Iran, including a former political prisoner and an Iranian from the Jewish community in Tehran. But first, the world's police. Here's the question that no one on the left seems to be able to answer when America steps back. Who exactly steps in? Now, much has already been said about President Trump's arrest of the Venezuelan dictator, Nicolas Maduro, and we'll address the details shortly. But first, we need to clear up a fundamental lie. Once again, we're hearing the usual socialist crowd scream about international law from people who have no serious understanding of what that even means. Figures like Mamdani, AOC, and Kasparian are condemning this action not because it was illegal or immoral, but because they're operating from a toxic, third-worldist ideology that refuses to acknowledge a basic truth of the modern world. Without the United States acting as the world's primary enforcer of order, the world doesn't become more peaceful. it becomes more violent, more authoritarian, and more dangerous. The vacuum left by American retreat isn't filled by peace-loving, diverse nations minding their own business. It's filled with dictatorships like Russia, China, and the Islamic Republic of Iran. We've seen this movie before. In the 1930s, the United States and Europe retreated into isolationism, convinced that power politics were immoral and that intervention was provocative. The result was not peace. It was Hitler, Stalin, and World War II. Tens of millions dead because democracies refused to confront monsters early and decisively. History didn't punish American strength. It punished American hesitation. The United States doesn't lead because it's perfect. It leads because Western democratic systems, however flawed, produce better outcomes for human life than authoritarian rule. That is not moral arrogance. It's a fact proven by history, economics, and human rights data. This is not about spreading democracy for ideological reasons. It's about a balance of power and realpolitik. American strength contains worst actors in the world and prevents far greater bloodshed. And to those complaining about tax dollars, here's a reality check. Foreign aid makes up roughly 1% of the U.S. federal budget, most of which circulates back into the American economy. And if you're worried about wasted money, look at entitlement spending, which consumes 65 to 70% of federal spending every year. The United States doesn't have the luxury of isolationism. When America leads, tyrants are contained. When America retreats, tyrants rule. History has already given us the answer. And now let's take that concept into our headlines this week, which predictably are about Venezuela and Iran. So first things first, let's sum up Venezuela. Just days into the new year, the United States took decisive action against one of the most brutal dictatorships in the Western Hemisphere. On January 3rd, U.S. forces launched a precision military operation against the Maduro regime in Venezuela, striking key military and security targets, including a facility linked to Iranian drone operations on Venezuelan soil. This was not a random force. It was a calculated move against a socialist narco-terror state that has destroyed an entire country. Now, Nicolas Maduro is not a legitimate leader. He stole elections through fraud and intimidation, ordered security forces to open fire on protesters, and oversaw the killing and disappearance of thousands of Venezuelans. Under his rule, political opponents were tortured, journalists were silenced, and civil society was crushed. The result has been catastrophic. More than 1/3 of Venezuela's population was forced to flee, turning this into the second largest refugee crisis in the world after Syria. Maduro turned Venezuela into a haven for global criminal networks and hostile dictatorships. His regime functioned as a key hub for drug trafficking and money laundering and sanctions evasions too. Hundreds of millions, if not billions, of dollars were laundered through Venezuela by the Islamic Republic of Iran using state-controlled banks, energy projects, and front companies. The Islamic regime also established direct military cooperation with Maduro, including drone technology training and facilities operating in the Western Hemisphere within striking distance of the United States. And this is why the targeting of an Iranian drone facility mattered. Venezuela under Maduro was not just a failed state. It was a forward operating base for America's enemies. President Trump did the United States and the Venezuelan people a favor. Removing Maduro wasn't aggression, it was accountability. But the job isn't done. Delcy Rodriguez, the vice president, is no moderate. She's a key architect of the regime's repression and a butcher in her own right. Propping her up would be a grave mistake for the U.S. administration. The world must stand with Maria Corina Machado and the Venezuelan people, not with the remnants of a criminal regime. This operation sent a clear message that the United States will not tolerate socialist dictatorships that export terror laundering money for the Islamic Republic of Iran and destroy millions of lives. But their job isn't done yet. Free Iran. Which brings us to my next story. The beloved Iranians are once again showing the world what real courage looks like. Over the past week and continuing tonight, tens of thousands of Iranians have taken to the streets across the country, risking everything to demand an end to the Islamic regime. They're being met with live fire, mass arrests, beatings, and yes, death. And still, they're not backing down. Now, the immediate spark was crushing inflation and economic collapse brought on by the regime's criminal mismanagement. But these protests are about far more than bread or prices. They're about 47 years of corruption, repression, and stolen futures. An entire generation that has known nothing but lies, fear, and poverty is saying enough. What makes this moment different is where it began. The protests erupted in the bazaar, once a pillar of regime support. When merchants closed their shops and joined the uprising, it sent a shock through the system. And more cities are joining every day. As of now, 108 cities have been participating. The chants on the street leave no room for doubt. Death to the dictator. And louder than ever, a call we haven't heard at this scale in decades. The return of Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi. Now, the regime knows the danger. Security forces have been deployed in overdrive. Internet blackouts have been imposed. Ambulances have been used to transport security units. Hospitals with protesters are even being raided by the regime. And yet the people are refusing to back down. In response, Israel has made it clear that it stands with the Iranian people and their right to freedom. President Trump has also publicly expressed support for the protesters and directly threatened the regime if they continue slaughtering their own people. Now, will he act? Remains to be seen, but his comments matter because the Islamic Republic survives on isolation and abandonment. Now, every time the world looks away, the regime kills in the dark. Every time the world speaks up, however, it loses confidence and ultimately control. This isn't a protest wave, it's a national uprising with momentum, organization, and a clear political demand. The Iranian people don't want reform, they want the end of the Islamic Republic and the reclaiming of their country. The question now isn't whether the Iranian people are ready. They've proven that they are. The question is whether the world will stand with them this time or yet again betray them. And now to give us a deeper look at the reality inside Iran right now and the state of the protest movement, we're joined by Naveed Mohabbi, a longtime democracy advocate, Iran expert, and former political prisoner of the Islamic Republic. Now, he previously served as the policy director at the National Union for Democracy in Iran, NUFTI, where he focused on Iran policy, advocacy, and democratic transition planning. He's also worked as a media analyst at the U.S. Department of State and a comms specialist at the Department of Homeland Security. Naveed co-authored the foreign policy and security sections of the Iran Prosperity Project, led by Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, which we'll speak about in a minute, and he regularly briefs journalists and policymakers on protests inside Iran and regional security dynamics. Naveed, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here on Axis of Truth. Now, to start from what you're seeing inside of Iran right now, I know you're speaking to a lot of people on the ground. How widespread are these protests and how coordinated are they compared to the previous uprisings that we've seen?
Thank you for having me on, Emily. I think the protests uh, have been growing over the past 8 days, and despite repeated threats from the Islamic Republic, people are continuing to come out with remarkable courage, and we are seeing demonstrated reported in more than 60 cities, and even some outlets say that it's in more than 90 cities protests happening. I think it's important not to view these protests in isolation. What's happening right now is part of a much longer trajectory. This is effectively the fourth time that people are coming to the street, the first time being in 2017, and then 2019, 2021, and now. And you see each time these protests have become broader, more political, and more socially diverse. It's no longer, upper middle class, or lower class. Everyone is coming to the street. And I think that the pro-democracy movement inside Iran has really never gone away. It's been going on for almost 8 years, and it's evolving. And as you can see, the cost has also been enormous over the past 8 years. My estimate is that more than 3,500 people have lost their lives. And as people are going to the street once again, I think that the history of the past 8 years is present in their mind, and that's why we are seeing that people are more determined to confront the Islamic Republic once again.
Now, this regime, as we've seen, is using live fire. They're making mass arrests. They're intimidating or attempting to the protests. Is the level of brutality that we're seeing, is it a sign of confidence of the regime or desperation? And how brutal has the crackdown been thus far after what is now over a week of protesting?
As you probably saw in the news, more than 25 people have been killed by the regime. I think the crackdown intensified over the past 3 days, especially yesterday after Khamenei's speech. That's his method. For the first few days of the protest, he hide away. He doesn't show up in front of the camera, and then he comes, blames the West, blame Israel, blames United States, and calls everybody enemy, and then calls for crackdown. And the Islamic Republic doesn't have any solution to solve these issues, none. When you see a regime that is out of options, in something like Islamic Republic, they always fall back on repression, and that's what we are seeing at the moment. I always emphasize that this regime has no solution to resolve people's issues. What that means is that protest is going to happen again and again. It's either people are going to win or the regime is going to, once again oppress people. The protests are not going anyway because the regime doesn't have any solution. That's something that I always emphasize because it's important for policymakers in the West and those who are watching the situation in Iran. Protests are going to happen again, even if it fades away this time.
Now, Naveed, this may be a little bit personal, but you yourself are a dissident, a former political prisoner who was persecuted by this same regime. Can you explain a little bit to our viewers what the Islamic Republic does to dissidents, to some of these protesters when they are arrested? I mean, what are they facing?
I was arrested myself twice on the street and once at my home. And to be honest, because of that experience, watching these arrest videos is deeply traumatizing for me. And I think for everyone who knows me and my posts on social media, I'm an analyst, but I get emotional. And sometimes even I get desperate. When you're arrested in the street in Iran, your entire life and your family's life can change in an instant. There's a real risk of beating, torture, losing your job, being expelled from a school or your workplace. We already see security forces brutally beating people. You watch these videos and even shooting at protesters in public. They're once again shooting at people's eyes. Protesters are being uh, blinded. You can only imagine, what happens once someone is taken in detention, what they're doing in front of cameras, in front of the public, what they would be capable of doing um, inside the regime's prisons. And that's why I think that what protesters are doing is remarkable. It's extraordinary. They know exactly what they are facing, and they're still going out. Um, I'm not sure if you have followed some of the people that have been killed. They posted something. I'm going to the streets. I may not, you know, come back. Pray for me. We have to take Iran back. I think that shows remarkable courage from the side of Iranian protesters.
Now, what are the protesters saying on the streets today? What are they demanding? Are they demanding reform? Are they demanding regime change? Or is it something even more fundamental about sovereignty or national identity? And what is the role of Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi in these protests?
I have been asked these questions over the past 8 years, and when people ask me this question, what protesters want, I always say, don't listen to the so-called experts in Washington, D.C. Listen to the chants. The message is very clear. What they are saying, what they want, what they don't want. I don't want to repeat these slogans. I think everybody saw that. But across Iran, people are calling only one name over and over again. It's not in like 2 videos, 4 videos, 10 videos. Across Iran, in every province that has been protested in 25 provinces in Iran. We have 31 or 32 provinces at the moment. I think that reflects a broad and growing consensus for many Iranians. The Crown Prince represents national unity and a credible alternative. And I think that there's a clear expectation that he will lead the transition period once this regime is gone.
Now, what is the role of Israel in these protests? If there is a role, and what are the people on the ground wanting to see, if anything, from the state of Israel?
Many Iranians today see Israel as a partner, as their bestie, as their close friends. I don't know if you have watched the videos that Iranians are making about Bibi Netanyahu, the songs and everything else. It's very funny. I think Iranians are increasingly, shifting from the past and looking at Israel very positively. They look at Israel as a partner. And I have to be honest, I think over the past 2 years or 3 years, the emotional and the connection between Iranians and Israelis has grown to an unprecedented level. That's something that you can clearly see on social media, in public discourse, and in how people talk inside Iran. Israel, I think, is viewed as a strong, capable, and intelligent country, one that has real capacity to help. You yourself have pointed out, I think, 2 days ago, what Israelis can do to help the people of Iran, and I couldn't agree more with what you have mentioned. I'm not going to repeat it again. And to my Iranian friends, while the Israeli officials may be relatively quiet publicly, I'm confident that there is serious work happening behind the scenes. We are average citizens. We don't have to know everything. It's not good to talk about these things publicly. And I think that at the higher level, there is a connection, there's a communication, there's a coordination going on. And I think that this kind of growing partnership have raised a lot of expectations from Iranians. Why Israelis are not doing anything, but I'm 100% confident that there's work being done. There's a serious coordination and collaboration behind the scene. And at some point, things I think are going to be more public. I think after October 7, Israel policy has changed. They see the Islamic Republic as an existential threat, not just their nuclear program, but also their ballistic missile program and the very existence of this regime. Israel can afford to fight the Iranian regime every 6 months, every 4 months, because once you strike them, they are able to rebuild their nuclear program or their ballistic missile program. I think that Israel understand that, you know what, we are done with this regime, and their policy have publicly shifted after October 7. October 7 was a horrible tragedy, but I think that it has also has also opened many eyes in terms of policy towards Iran and the very nature of the Iranian regime. Hamas would not have been able to do it by itself without the help of the Islamic Republic. 91% of Hamas funding comes from the Islamic Republic. So I think that Israel now, it's very clear eye about the nature of the regime, and I think that regime change is part of their official policy, even if they don't say it. It's part of their policy.
Well, I certainly hope that you're right, but perhaps that's my own biases. I do want to ask you, I know that you've done a lot of work with Nufti. How does the Crown Prince's transition plan for the day after the Islamic Republic, how does it answer a lot of Western concerns about instability after this regime falls? We know that a lot of officials they don't want to say that they support regime change because they're scared of a repeat of Iraq or Afghanistan. How does the Prince's transition plan answer some of those concerns?
2 months ago, Crown Prince team led by Saeed Qasemi-Nejad, they have put out a very long document, 140 pages, what they're going to do on day one, what is their plan in terms of stability for Iran after the collapse of the regime, how many elections we're going to have, for the first 6 months after the overthrow of the Islamic Republic, and the kind of relationship that the Crown Prince team is seeking with Israel and United States. There are only two countries. I was involved in writing the foreign policy section of it. There are only two countries that this document mentions. Iranians are looking to have a strategic relationship. It's not just a normalization relationship with Israel. We have seen some normalization, but it's only on paper. What Crown Prince is envisioning is a strategic relationship with Israel on security, on coordination, on trade. So not only Crown Prince is relying on defection, as you have probably saw it in the news. There's a defection program going on. More than 75,000 people, from security forces have joined this defection program in cooperation with the Crown Reza Pahlavi. It's a secret plan, but I'm sure that Crown Prince definitely updates its international friends and partners on what's happening. It's not in the public. So I think the vision that the Crown Prince has is that we are going to rely on this defection and our people and the plan that we have, and more than 100 experts that are working on these documents, as well as our international partners such as Israel. I think everyone can see in the news how close and trusted the Crown Prince is in the views of the Israeli government. There's a close collaboration going on, but of course, we don't have to see everything on the news. And I think that when you put these, different factors next to one another, you can picture how a post-Islamic Republic is going to look like. I think I'm very biased. I love Crown Prince, but I'm also an analyst. I'm brutally honest. When I analyze, I have two characters, an analyst and an advocate. So I'm saying this as an advocate. The Crown Prince is the most popular figure inside Iran. But you can imagine over the past 12 years that I've been living in the United States, how Washington, D.C. views Crown Prince, these so-called experts, because there have been enormous coordinated campaign going on saying he's irrelevant. He doesn't have any plan. Nobody likes him in Iran. He has been in exile for 47 years, but listen to people, listen to what they are saying. Even sometimes our closest friends and allies, they had doubt about Crown Prince, because all these so-called experts, the same people that, for example, advised President Obama during 2009 to stay quiet, don't support them. The same very so-called experts have been saying, oh, this man is irrelevant. He doesn't have any support. I think this has been very frustrating. And I hope that what we are seeing right now in Iran, the protest, it clearly shows who has the upper hand inside Iran. And also for Israelis and Americans, I would say this. And I used to tell them this because some of them had doubt about Crown Prince, especially his popularity. I said, even if you think that he doesn't have the majority of, support inside Iran, it's in your national interest to support him, especially for Israelis. After October 7, you could see Iranians all around the world marching alongside with Israelis. I saw the wife of the Crown Prince participating in a huge protest by pro-Israeli and Jewish groups in the United States after October 7. She protested there. I was with her. There were only a few of us, but there weren't cameras there. So the Pahlavi's friendship with the state of Israel and the Jewish people, they don't do this in front of camera to garner your support. I was with them and everybody saw them. Even when camera is not there, his wife, actively participated in those marches. I think that shows the level of, friendship and love that they have with the state of Israel. And I don't have to talk about Iranian Jews. They also love Israel and United States. I think Pahlavi supporters are the most pro-West segment of Iranian society. and Israel is not going to spend so much resources on Iran if this regime collapses and we have another groups that are anti-Israel or anti-West. But let's not forget this. Crown Prince of Iran acknowledges that not everyone supports him. He acknowledges that Iranian society is diverse. If you look at his plan, especially that 140 pages document, he says that in the first 3 months of post-Islamic Republic, there's going to be election. People get to choose the form of the government, and people get to choose the future form of government in terms of whether we are going to have a parliamentarian system or other systems. Every group, every segment of Iranian society would have the chance to be elected, to ask people to vote for them. Just because you are a minority doesn't mean that you don't have any means to participate in electoral process. Just look at Israel. We have two major, groups. We have, for example, better than me, but there are smaller groups in Israel. They can freely participate in electoral process, but nobody can claim that, well, these, the mainstream groups in Israel are dictators because they don't allow us to take power. A group that has the upper hand takes power. So just because you're not going to be the next leader of Iran doesn't mean that there is some, bad things going on, or the crown prince leadership is not democratic or something like that. That's just a norm in politics. A group that has the upper hand, gets to rule Iran, but it doesn't mean that other segments of Iranian societies are going to be excluded. So that's a very important point. Even if you don't like Crown Prince, but you can still support this movement because you or your group, you're going to have a chance to participate in electoral process in the future of Iran.
I think that it's also important for the West to understand because it's very much in line with democratic values. I mean, whatever the people of Iran ultimately decide, I think it's something really missing from a lot of the conversations.
It's up to them.
Exactly. As a last question, I do want to ask you, what do you believe will determine whether this uprising succeeds or fails? And at what moment should the world be determining that, hey, this is the real turning point for Iran?
I think everything goes back to one question. How can we disable the killing machine of the Islamic Republic and their security forces and their capability to crush protests? I don't say these kind of things when I speak Persian to Iranian people, but as an analyst, not as an advocate. After 2019 protests in Iran, I have come to this realization that protest alone is not going to overthrow the Islamic Republic because the nature of this regime is very similar to Muammar Gaddafi in Libya or the Bashar Assad. They're not Hosni Mubarak. They're not Ben Ali of Tunisia. So I think that regime change in Iran will be hybrid. It's going to involve Iranian people. They have to take the charge. They have to take the lead. They shouldn't expect others to do the job for them. So they have to be involved. External pressure, similar to what we have seen in the first round of Israel and Islamic Republic war, that 2 years war, that has to be another factor. And the third factors are a very small, semi-armed group. They don't have to be large, that can be effective to take over certain places, institutions inside Iran. These three factors. And I think everyone knows that. I think even many Iranians understand that protests alone cannot topple the regime. But Iranians have to be involved. Iranians have to take the lead, take the charge. If they don't go out and protest, I think Israelis would say, we can't do everything for you. We can support, but ultimately, it's your fight. So I think Israelis and Americans, they want to see some sort of leadership from inside Iran in terms of people going to the street and protesting. But I think they also understand that there needs to be other factors involved as well.
All right, well, hopefully that's exactly what we'll see from the United States and from Israel as well, if they're not already helping out a little here and there. Hopefully they are.
I think they are thinking about it.
They're definitely thinking about it, yes. We'll have to see, but we'll leave it at that for now. Naveed Mohibi, thank you so much for joining us on Axis of Truth.
Thank you for having me on.
Now, I want to really focus on this issue with Iran because we are at a crucial time right now where the regime itself has the potential to collapse in the next couple of weeks. So I do have another guest to give us a bit more insight into the West's role and what is really happening inside Iran. Jonathan Sayeh, an Iranian himself who grew up in the Iranian Jewish community in Tehran, he has both personal and professional experience with this regime. He's an Iran research analyst at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies in Washington, D.C., where he focuses on Iranian domestic affairs and the Islamic Republic's regional malign influence. Born and raised in Tehran's Jewish community, Jonathan also took part in the 2009 protests against the regime before relocating to the United States. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us on Axis of Truth. It's great to have you with us. I know I've wanted to have you on for a while, so it's great to have you here. I just want to start off by asking you, how are Iran's religious minorities taking this uprising? Are they experiencing it differently than some of the other, major cities that we're seeing? And is there a specific center of repression that's targeting any of these specific groups, or is it more broadly applying to everyone, as we've seen so far?
Ultimately, perhaps the Islamic Republic's only indiscriminatory policy is its persecution of all Iranians. That's what we've seen so far. But when we talk about religious minorities, there has been a slight increase compared to the past of the regime's repression apparatus targeting them, whether it's Jews or Christians or Baha'is, which started after the 12-Day War because it gave the Islamic Republic another justification to target these minorities with the longest ever heard label, which is their perhaps operating on behalf of the Zionist entity, quote unquote, or their spies, simply because they have loved ones abroad. But when we look at the protest really tracker of the Iran as a whole, we look at different provinces. Similar to Women Life Freedom in 2022, we're seeing protests in every major city and small town. Rural areas are coming out. And of course, there's a major trend when it comes to specifically pro-monarchy and nationalist sentiments amongst all Iranians.
Now, what is the sentiment that we've seen so far in these protests that's different than before? I mean, you mentioned that there's a lot more of the monarchist calls or chants across different provinces. Is that significant? And if so, why?
It certainly is, mostly because the main criticism of Iran's civic movements in the past has been that they're not necessarily organized, meaning there's no leader of the movement as a whole. But now, if you look at the chants on the ground, and of course in authoritarian systems, it's very important that we pay attention to the streets because polling is inherently unreliable and the regime's media repression doesn't allow the real sentiments to get out. So when we look at the streets, we see that more and more increasing the youth especially, so we're talking about Gen Z and younger millennials calling out for the Shah. Initially, in the past few years, the label was that it's mostly nostalgia, but that again is not the case anymore because they're actually going after the current Pahlavi, Reza Pahlavi, the crown prince, and calling for his return. So it is significant because the organization of really the protest movement is not leaderless anymore, and there's a very clear alternative to the Islamic Republic.
Well, that actually brings up a really interesting point that I wanted to talk to you a bit more about, and that is, what is the role of the West, or is there any in this situation? I mean, Western governments often say they support the Iranian people, as we've seen, even from President Trump, but words haven't really slowed the crackdown that we're seeing thus far, the violence from the regime. What, if any, specific actions could actually help the protesters on the ground from the West right now?
There are a few things that could be done. One pillar of that is something that has to be long-term, has to be systemic, which is enabling Iranian protesters to have access to each other and the outside world. And that could only be done through not even VPNs anymore. We need Starlink, because when there's a protest in a certain area, they could just shut down internet entirely, as we saw in 2019. So necessarily VPNs do not cut the criteria for supporting the protests. We need satellite access. And there is increasingly more Starlink across the country, but we need more of that. But talking about right now what needs to be done, I think the threat issued by President Trump specifically targets what you just mentioned, which is if you were to continue with your repression, there will be consequences. And we have not seen this, I guess, clear of a threat against the regime's repression apparatus. And we saw how aggressively they came out. And with the rhetoric coming from Tehran, we know that they're really scared. So I think Trump is the only president that the Islamic Republic genuinely fears in the last few years. They did not have the same concerns with Biden or Obama when it comes to really backing up Iranian protesters. But when we talk about public diplomacy of this administration, it's very, very important for the Persian language outlets to really cover what's going on the ground. We're not necessarily calling for endorsement, but U.S. public diplomacy needs to reflect the wide range of opinions on the ground, and they are increasingly gravitating towards a monarchy, and we have not seen that being reflected by Persian language outlets. Specifically, I'm talking about VOA and USA by Farsi, one of which is run by the State Department. So those two things are key, but let's say there would be another round of confrontation between the Islamic Republic and Israel. What we ideally would see is Washington's green light, if not support, for Israel to actually target the regime's repression apparatus, going after specific Basij sites around the country, RGC bases. We saw that towards the end of the war, they went after the different commands that really suppressed protests in Tehran. So more of that ideally, and green light from Washington to actually go not only after high-level officials, but mid-level crackdown officials that would really allow Iran's civic movements to grow and expand.
Now, Jonathan, I want to press you a little bit more on this issue because I'm wondering what you would say or what you would suggest. You mentioned Israel, but when it comes to Europe, is there more that the European Union, that Western democratic states beyond the United States and Israel can do to empower the people of Iran right now? I know we already have sanctions on the books. Some are being enforced, some of them not so much. Is there more that can be done from that European front?
Of course, when we talk about sanctions, of course, Washington can also implement human rights sanctions. We haven't seen this administration do plenty of human rights sanctions throughout the last year. Similar with Europe, even though they've implemented more sanctions. But as you pointed out, it's about enforcing them. So, for example, in the past protest waves, we've seen different weaponry used by the repression apparatus that originated from Europe, some from Italy. So more scrutiny on these companies to ensure that the Islamic Republic does not get its hands on Western-made weapons to suppress Iranian protests. That's very important. And that needs to be coupled with an effective public diplomacy, that we listen to Iranians as to whom they've chosen as their leader.
Jonathan, what mistakes has the West made in the past on this issue? I mean, there's many, but what mistakes have they made when engaging with the Islamic Republic, especially during past waves of protests? And what do you think can be done differently this time in order to avoid what the Iranian people largely see as a betrayal of what we purport to be Western values?
The first example of that was in 2009, when President Obama later on admitted that he was reluctant to publicly or even privately endorse or support Iran's civic movement in the 2009 protest wave that was mostly around Tehran, which was actually active on the ground at the time. But what we can do differently, as President Trump alluded, is that yes, we can